Like everybody's too.
All right.
They should be able to apply.
It's 6:31 actually, so I'm gonna call the City of Lake Elmo Council Workshop for August 12th to order. First on our agenda is the Washington County Sheriff proposed 2027 budget.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you know, we do partner with Washington County Sheriff's Office to provide our law enforcement arm for our community. And so tonight we do have Sheriff Starry here, who's going to go through the proposed 2027 budget for the Sheriff's Office.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council members, team. Thank you all for being here with us. I am Sheriff Dan Starry, and I've been with Washington County since July 12th, 1993. So coming up on 33 and almost 34 years. It's been my privilege and honor to have served for the past 10 years as your sheriff. It's certainly been humbling over these past 10 years. We have a great team here in Lake Elmo. And sitting in the back row, I'd be remiss not to point out some of my leadership team. I have Chief Deputy Doug Anschutz, Sheriff, I promoted you. Chief Deputy Anschutz has been with us for 30 years. Started in 1996, came out all the way through the ranks. Started as Chief Deputy about 6 years ago. Commander Sarah Halverson. Sarah is our patrol commander. She oversees the whole patrol division. So when we talk about police contracts and we talk about townships and all of the policing services that we do, Commander Halverson oversees that. She has been with us for quite a while, 26 years, Sarah. And so between the two of them, there's a lot of knowledge there, that's for sure. And then, as you know, Sergeant Ty Jacobson, who is appointed here as the benefacto, I guess, Chief of Police of Lake Elmo. Everything that you need should go through him. And Ty has been with us for quite a while as well. And Ty is amazing. Whether when he started and came through, he was on SWAT, canine trainer. We promoted him, I believe, 10 years ago as sergeant, and he's been with us doing that and doing a really great job for the city of Lake Elmo, but other positions that he finds himself in as well. So wanted to point those three out as well. So within the Sheriff's Office, here's your team. You have Sergeant Ty Jacobson, who I just introduced, Deputy Anthony Palmer, Deputy Tristan Moravsky, Deputy Shane Thorsten, Deputy Daniel Wolf, Deputy Jackson Sayers, Deputy Joseph Maloney, and then Deputy Tyler Freeman is actually assigned here as well, but he is paid by the city of Landfall. When we started this project with a police contract with Landfall, we wanted to make sure that there was a sergeant that oversaw that sergeant. So we worked with the city of Lake Elmo. So basically you get one deputy, not for free, but sort of for free, right? He is here, serves the city of Landfall, but most of the time he is serving both Lake Elmo and the city of Landfall, so which is really good. Why we are here tonight is basically for these reasons: the increase in residential area and the population. Certainly we continue to see the growth in Lake Elmo, whether it is commercial, whether it's residential. We certainly have a lot of new neighborhoods that are popping up and are planned here in the future. And for us, with the Sheriff's Office, it wouldn't be wise for us to not plan ahead, and basically this is what we are doing. We're making sure. We started meeting with Christina Administrator Han back in the day and sort of laid out our vision of when we needed was hirings, at what time. We certainly met with Nicole and made sure that she was aware of where we are and where we need to be as we get going as well. So the residential area of the population, the increase in commercial businesses, proactive traffic enforcement you will see here in a little bit, problem-oriented policing, basically that's our proactive patrols. We want to be out there, we want to be present, but we also want to be at the community events that you have and wish to have in the future. The other side of all of this is officer safety. Our calls could continue to get more complex with substance use disorder, with mental health challenges that we continue to see out there. Most of these calls are to deputy calls that we go to. Fire chief can speak to that as well. They certainly see the same type of thing on their calls. Officer safety is very paramount. We want to make sure our people are safe out there. Our reports and calls for service, our number of calls for service actually decreased, and you can see that on line 1 from 10,667 down to 9,676. So roughly about 1,000 calls that they went down. However, what you will also notice is the total reports that are generated actually went up by about 250 reports. That means those are the types of calls that we go on to that are 2 deputy or 3 deputy calls, or calls in for service, and then there's got to be a report at the end of it, because the state needs to be notified, the hospitals need to be notified, community services, social services, etc. There's more to do than that.
So just question, just
Yes.
trying to understand that. So each deputy that reports to a call has to fill out a report?
Depending on
Is that-
what, so if, for example, if you go to a lockout, you know, someone locks their keys in the cars, no.
Okay.
But anything else that needs to go somewhere, whether it's the prosecuting attorney, the county attorney, social services, all of those need reports.
Okay.
Domestic abuse, the state law just changed August 1st, so any type of domestic related situations need a report. That's state mandated as of August 1st. Sometimes there was verbal arguments and it really wasn't an argument. You get there and it's really a nothing deal. That now requires a report, and that will only add to this.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
One of the things that we talked about is proactive policing. This slide right here, what you see is our citations issued in 25, 809 citations that were issued versus 2024, the 534. What we had saw in correlation to that is the motor vehicle accidents actually went down in 2025. And you can see that from 263 in 24 to 247. We correlate that to our active, proactive policing style with traffic enforcement. On top of that, it was just over 3,000 traffic stops that we made in the city of Lake Elmo alone last year. So about, what is that, about 1 out of every 3 traffic stops gets a citation. A lot of warnings, a lot of verbal warnings, things like that. But those that need a ticket, they get tickets. There's no doubt about that. And we do see by being out there, stopping cars, being proactive, that our accidents are going down, and hopefully that will continue to go down. Our arrests, you'll see our total arrests basically stayed the same. From 172 to 171 arrests. So those are staying about the same. Our DWI arrests, it went up by 2, but basically those stayed the same too. But you can see 58 arrests for DWIs. DWIs take about 3 hours to process. So you get one, and then depending on if it's a alcohol DWI or if it's a substance DWI. It's totally different. They have to call a drug recognition expert in, they have to take vitals, they have to do all this stuff, and it does tie up the officer for quite a while with that, so. As I talked about the mental health and substance use calls for service, we saw a slight increase from 24 to 25 of 3. What I'll say about these calls is all these calls do take a report. They do go to social services, community services at the county. And then a lot of these are transported by Lakeview ambulance, the mental health. If they're in crisis, they go down to regions. And so there's transport holds and et cetera, and paperwork that is filled out with that as well.
And the county has community resource people for those calls to help out the deputies, right?
So we have a crisis response team.
Okay.
They work Monday through Friday, and they work 8 to 4, and that is with our social workers that work during those times as well. What I will say is we do things a little bit different than like the city of Woodbury. They have the same program. You'll see them being out there at the call. They don't necessarily take over the call, they assist. For what we end up doing is we're so busy that we look at how do we stop the calls to begin with. So our team will look at every call that comes in the next day and figure out what kind of services do they need. They reach out to the people, they reach out to the services, and we try to stop the repeat offenders and get them the help and the services that they need so it does not take up the deputy's time out on the street.
And I'm assuming if deputies find that more effective than previously not having that.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. We started looking at this a few years ago. We partnered with Washington County Community Services, and we had them in our jail, social workers, and we saw the effectiveness in there, because once they go into the jail, what do we do with them at that point, right? And we got to get them the services, we got to get them the help that they need. So when they get out of the jail, that they have those services and they don't potentially reoffend. Same type of thing out on the street is if we can stop that ahead of time, that's our goal. Get them the services that they need before they actually call 911 and tie up our deputies, our fire, our ambulance services to transport them.
Great.
One of the things that I'm very proud of the Sheriff's Office, besides the police contract and the deputies that are here, these are the services that also come in. And Mayor, I saw your post yesterday on Facebook about the Washington County Sheriff's Office. Thank you for that. But I wanted to make sure that everyone knows what you all get. This is stuff that is not paid for. This is just the service that you get. If you had your own police department, you would have to pay for all of this stuff extra. So we just talked about the coordinated response unit, the embedded social worker program. We talked about, there was a new law that went into effect last year where we have to have an embedded social worker in our communication center as well. So we do have that. Hopefully when the calls come in, if it's a lower call that doesn't include harm to themselves, that it can be transferred over to the social worker and they can get them the services that they need instead of requesting law enforcement's help. The community service officer, the CSO program, these are our, it's a newer program that we started a couple of years ago. Basically, this is a great recruiting tool for us. It brings in those students that are going to law enforcement, that are looking to get a little ahead in the law enforcement field, taking calls, things like that. What we have found out is then they stay with us. They can choose their hours. Typically it's on the weekends that they work, which is a force multiplier for our deputies. DWI, there's typically a car that's associated with it, and the deputies had to sit there with the car till the tow truck came. The CSOs can now do that. or they can take the prisoner down to the jail if there is an arrest. So, I mean, just, it's great. It's great for these kids that are going into law enforcement. We've already hired 3 out of that program in such a short year, so that's been very beneficial for us. The Community Impact Unit, our community survey back in 2023 came out and said, our public and our citizens are scared of our roadways. And so we started this Community Impact Unit. It's a sergeant and 2 deputies, and they just go out and they do traffic. Wherever the citizens call in and complain, and wherever we see the most accidents, any time, day or night, they're out there. They switch up their hours all the time. You don't know what they're working. They do have a Ford Bronco as well. If you see a Ford Bronco with all kinds of cameras on it, might be them. So they do a wonderful job. We also, from the state, we have a DWI enforcement deputy, and that is completely paid for by the state, making sure that we're trying to get the DWIs off the road so we prevent injuries and fatalities out on the roadways. Our community engagement team, certainly we just had some of our team out here for National Night Out and other engagements at the fair, etc. This is one of the ways that we can get out, engage with our public, instead of something occurring and then they're learning who we are and what we are. We're already out there meeting our community out in the residential areas. Our training unit, much like fire, there's a lot of trainer requirements to get your post license and to keep your post license up to date. Certainly the state continues to mandate courses that we have to take, whether it's firearms, whether it's less lethal, whether it's defensive tactics, whether it's dealing with individuals with autism or persons in crisis. There's a lot of state mandates that they place on us. They audit us every year. We got to make sure that all of our ducks are in a row for that, and so we have a training unit to do that. We just purchased a Sheriff's Training Academy and Response Center. This is the old Century College building down along I-94 as you go into Hudson, West Lakeland, Afton area. And we use that for our training, and we'll continue to do that. Our Water Parks and Trails unit is also housed out of there as well. They're close to the St. Croix and some of our lakes, like Lake Elmo, etc. Supervision 24/7. When Ty leaves, someone's got to still be here to supervise those deputies that are still out on the street, and the supervision is all included in that 24/7. We have our records requests, our data requests, because we get a lot of data. I'm sure you all do too. And we get a lot of requests, and just making sure that all the paperwork goes to and from, and all the audits are recorded. State crime reporting for our violent crimes in our Part 1, Part 2 crimes. They all go into a system called the National Incident Reported Database. They all go there, and that is, we have to do that yearly. Evidence room, all of these cases that we do typically involve some type of evidence that we need to collect, either for safekeeping, because they're in jail, or for evidence. So evidence management, we have a person in there that just deals with all of our evidence, gets it, if it needs to go to forfeiture, etc., or it goes over to court for trial, making sure everything is done correctly. Our public information officer support, anything that we have a PIO that if it's needed, they're in-house and they're available to us at a call as well. They're within the sheriff's office. We have a lot of squad cars. And fleet management, our squad cars continue to go up in price, but we have to make sure that we have working squad cars for all of our deputies that hit the roads. But besides that, it's just the fleet side of it is the oil changes, it's the tires. What happens when you hit a deer? Unfortunately, we hit quite a few deer during the year. So it's just one of the things, working with the insurance company and making sure that that's all done. All of that is completed and free of charge. And then we have about almost 291 employees, full-time employees within the sheriff's office. So what you see in Lake Elmo is a small group of what we have, but we also do all of the HR and all the mandates that the state has in regards to that. So a lot of additional services that you get with the sheriff's office. Any questions on those? The 2027 police service cost currently for 2027, if we stay the same, it's 1 sergeant and 6 deputies. The total annual contract cost is $1.4 million. That is approximately about $98 per capita at this point. If you go to any other city, I guarantee you that they're closing in on $200 to $300 per capita per person. What we're asking for is to add an additional deputy because of the things that we had talked about before. That proposed police service cost would go up to $1.6 million. That comes out to about $11 more per capita per person within the city of Lake Elmo.
So that would have been a good number for my poll.
Yes. So it comes out to $109 instead of $98 per capita, so it's about $11 increase for that. Again, everything that comes with that.
Sheriff, we have a question.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah. So, looking at the table here.
Yep.
We have deputies pay 7 FTE, 16,296 units, which I would assume is the hour rate.
Correct.
So, I was confused because 2,080 is full-time employee, and times 7 is 14,560. So I'm wondering what that difference is.
Yeah, so for the city, or for Lake Elmo and all, well, for Washington County law enforcement, for the most part, we don't work a 40-hour work week. We are off of 171 hours in a month.
Okay.
And so that's really what that comes down to, is the hours that we work with it. So.
Yeah, because I was just looking at the other sheet, the slide before this too. If you take 12,480 and divide that by 2,080 was 6 evenly. So I was just curious what that difference was, why that wasn't the same.
Yeah, you'll see on our time cards, sometimes it's in a work week, it's 50 hours instead of 40 hours, and it's all at straight time.
Okay, got it.
Under FELSA, they allow law enforcement to use the 171. So
Okay.
that way we don't have to pay overtime.
And then can you explain shift differential as well?
Yeah, absolutely. The shift differential basically is the number of hours that they get. We call it premium pay, but it's extra pay for working holidays and working afternoons and midnights. The day shift does not get them. That's why the hours are shorter on that. Not everyone gets the shift differential.
Got it.
And so that's sort of like premium pay and something that the contracts with the unions allow.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Any other questions? And with that, I will say, being sheriff and being here almost 34 years, we have a great team. I am so proud of our team. If you sit and just look at the 4 of us, we're over 100 years of service. We're proud of what we do. We're proud of the agency. We're proud to serve the city of Lake Elmo, all of our police contracts. We want you to think of us as your police department. That's the way it should be. If you have any questions, you should always ask. That's how it should be, and that's how it's meant to run, us as your police department. Like I said, we have 291 full-time employees, and that goes from our Emergency Communication and Response Center, which is our 911 Communication Center. We have all of our correctional officers that deal with all the inmates that come on in. We have our courts division that we have to provide security for by law. Our water parks and trails unit, our emergency management. You've heard from Director Bruglin in the past. He is within the sheriff's office, so if there's a plane crash, any disaster, that team comes on out and assists the cities as we go. And I know he's done training for city councils and other council members here within the last couple of years. So this is, I just want to say thank you to you all. Reminder that this is a recommendation, it's a proposal, it's our proposal to you. We work in partnership to come up with this, and that's truly what it comes out to be. But for my years on, I'm coming to my end. I got about 5 months left. Doug's got somewhere between now and 5 months, probably one bad day away. But he's also retiring along with me. This year, you hear about retention and recruiting. We had 12 retirements this year, and that doesn't include us that are going out the door a lot. The one thing I will say is that Washington County continues to be the premier agency, one that people want to come to, and it's because of the team. They do a great job day in and day out, and I'm so proud of them. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
One last question. When is the last time that we added a deputy or a sergeant to the city force here?
I believe 4 years ago. I believe approximately.
Okay, got it. Cool, thank you.
I think it was 2 years ago.
It was more recent than that.
Yeah.
Okay. So in 27 P3, so, yeah.
Got it.
So we went from 6 deputies to 7 deputies, but our units went up by almost 4,000. So we're at 6 deputies, you had 12,480, about 2,000 hours roughly. And you go to 7 deputies and you jump up to 16,000 hours, which it seems like it went up by almost 4,000 hours to add 1 deputy.
Yeah, it
Am I
comes out to
missing something?
7.8 FTE.
We have 7 FTEs, we had 6 FTEs.
Right, what I'm saying is the 16,000, if you divide that out, it's 7.8 FTEs instead of 7.0 FTEs. That was my question earlier as well.
Yeah.
So one of the things that's calculated in as well is when they're on vacation, we have to fill those spots as well. You are never without someone within your area. So if there is a deputy that takes vacation, they all accrue vacation, they accrue PTO, sick time, things like that. Most of the time, if you take off, that's not filled. We fill it. We make sure that you never go without police protection.
It's just the proportion change per FTE. You had 6 in V4 at about 2,000, now you're 7 at, about 3,000.
Yeah. Doug, anything?
I'll check with Jane. We'll get back to you.
Okay.
We'll double check.
confirm.
Okay.
We want to make sure it's accurate.
Yeah.
So,
It probably is, it just seemed like it was a much bigger jump than you would have anticipated.
Yeah.
And I understand, you have to factor in all of your vacation, and, you have 2,080 hours of standard work here, but that doesn't include vacation time and sick time and all the other stuff, and then you've got your relief factor you have to build into that.
She has a formula that she plugs in, so
Yeah.
I will definitely,
Thank you.
we'll get you an answer right away.
Was there anything with some of the data you've been seeing? Like you presented data showing a quarter roughly of, was it arrests in Lake Elmo or DWI? Is that surprising to you? Is it similar trend for similar cities? Is it an outlier?
I don't think council member, I don't think it's an outlier at all. We continue to see within Washington County, within the metro, we continue to see the violations of the DWI laws. It is incredible. I think we are Washington County is a county where people come out to relax, to their cabins on the river, et cetera, and they don't stay here at night. There's a few hotels, et cetera, like that. So what we end up seeing is that they come out, they go to our cities, they recreate, and then they go home.
Gotcha.
And unfortunately, they don't have a designated driver most of the time. A lot of these that we get, certainly they're proactive by our DWI people. However, we also find them in accidents as well. And that's all of it's concerning. But Washington County is usually in the top 5 of fatalities every year.
Oh, wow.
We were on a great path this year. And within the last month, our fatalities rose again. Unfortunately, we're going to be right back in that time frame. We continue to work, we continue to hit hard, we continue to talk to our bars about not over-serving. That's one of the things that our division does as well. Gets out there and make sure that our bartenders and those that are the waitresses, waiters, the wait staff, that we're out there making sure that they're educated as well. But unfortunately, we do see that.
And so that was kind of be my next question. Obviously, we're not a charter city. We have very limited tools that we as a council have, but what would you want us to be aware of for our consideration moving forward, whether it's for DWI or certain other trends that we ourselves need to be aware of for the limited tools that we have?
I think for us, especially with the community survey, that for the last 2, if not 3 of them that have went out, it is about our roadways as far as DWIs, about distracted driving, and about fear of riding their bikes on our roadways. And those are always the top 3, or have been, the last several surveys. It's an interesting thing when you look at everything else that goes on in public safety. We are very fortunate to live and work in Washington County. We have great people, we have great partners, our roadways are good, they're wide, a lot of them are wide. We don't see a lot of fatalities with bikers, but what we end up seeing is a lot of distracted driving. Hence, like the Bronco vehicle that's out there. We try to be proactive as well. We try not to be the gotcha, but at some point, we have to be responsible for us driving. Right now, it's the e-bikes, it's the e-scooters, it's the e-dirt bikes. We're seeing a rise not only in Washington County or in Lake Elmo, but throughout Minnesota. Hastings just had another one that was severely injured. We have them as well. And that's going to be our next thing is how do we regulate this? One of the things that, as sheriff, I continue to do is be present down in speaking with whether it's speaking with our legislators here within Washington County or down at the Capitol, making sure that our needs are heard as well. And the things that we're seeing out here, we want to make sure that we have at least conversations with those that are responsible for passing the laws, regulating those, because that affects us all. Recently, obviously you saw a lot of the cities that are reducing their speed limits as well, right? I mean, that was one of the things that the legislators ended up doing, saying that cities could do that now. Will it help? I don't know. It'll, less speed should mean less injuries, hopefully. We'll see as the data comes in.
Oh, thank you for that, and thank you, Sheriff, for your time and for yours as well for your careers. It's been appreciated.
Councilmember Hearn.
Yeah, thank you for all you do. With the variables that were presented tonight, where is the data trending for 2026 so far?
As far as crime?
For all the variables that
Yeah.
were presented, so the calls for service, total reports, citations issued, motor vehicles. In 2026, where are we sitting at for these variables?
What I will say is, certainly the year is not done. The trending is that they're about the same or more. Certainly the citations, certainly the calls for service are up. Mental health calls will be up as well. I don't know why that is. I wish I knew. The persons in crisis that we respond to continue to be quite a few. And I'm not sure why that is, but law enforcement gets called to them quite a bit. But it's not just law enforcement, right? I mean, a lot of these persons in crisis in our fire department or our EMS as well, it eyes up a lot. But our trends are, we wouldn't, I don't come often to ask. I'm guessing that if you look at the trends in law enforcement, like the city of Woodbury, it's one officer per 1,000. I try to get one officer per 2,000 people. We know that that's the standard throughout. But I also know that all of these calls take 2 deputies, if not more. We do have a deputy that's in this area. We call it the self-centered car. It's a general patrol deputy, and they range from Highway 36 down to I-94. That person's in Lake Elmo quite a bit. They're supposed to be out in West Lakeland and Baytown, covering some of those calls, but they're in here quite a bit. So we try not to come too often, because we also know that this has a burden on taxpayers as well. We understand that. And so once the stats show it, once we see the growth coming in, we just want to be caught off guard as well with some of the things that we continue to see when population growth comes in.
That deputy per populations, that's a good stat to know. Do you think, is it possible to have that data shared with us to show where we're at in 2026 currently? And I don't know if there's seasonal fluctuations, so if it, if you look at it and you're like, well, yeah, it's way low, but we expect a surge in December. If you could maybe show year-to-date 2025 compared to year-to-date 2020, if that would be
we can do that,
helpful to
Councilman.
make the data make sense. I think that would be helpful to understand. And maybe the follow-up question to that would be, do you feel like we were understaffed in 2025? So the previous year, were we already understaffed?
I think if you ask any of our deputies out on that serve your community, you will hear that we're understaffed.
And would that be?
And that's.
Go ahead.
That is because usually it's the 2-person calls that pretty soon they're by themselves because they don't have someone there with, or they're waiting a long time for the self-centered car to come up.
So bringing this deputy on would be more trying to catch up, maybe, because we're already low, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, I would say that for me, and what I would say that this will tie us over for a few years to come, no doubt about that.
Do we have to, are you guys planning on adding another vehicle as well?
The vehicle cost is in it, so we go off of mileage. And so we don't charge you for the $50,000, $60,000 vehicle. We just do it by mileage. We don't think it's fair for you guys to have to purchase that vehicle and all the equipment in it. So we do charge by mileage. You'll see that each one of our deputies has their own assigned vehicle. And so when you're talking about 7, 8, they all have their own.
Yep.
That'd be a $400,000 bill, right? We switch them out every 2 to 3 years. It gets expensive for the city. We feel that it's part of the sheriff's office to make sure that we have the equipment to do it. But a lot of that mileage just comes down to the cost of fuel as well. I mean, we're at $3.99. Luckily, back in 2008, we started looking. I was in charge of our fleet at the time. We were looking at how do we save on fuel? And so us and Stillwater and our Public Works got together, and we're going to merge our fuels because all three of us were purchasing fuel separately. And so at that time, we were going to do this and get a consortium together. City of St. Paul reached out, said, hey, we're thinking about doing that as well. You want to jump in with us? We said yes. In 2 months, we had the whole state on. We lock in our fuel price typically in February or March. And so typically we get a lower price in fuel, and that is good for all year.
Gotcha.
We just have to promise that we're going to buy so many gallons, which we always hit our mark, that's never an issue. If we go over, we just pay the $3.99. That you see minus the taxes, but.
And then, is the 157,000, is that for all cruisers throughout the year? So what I'm getting at is the year before, it's still showing 157,500, and then the next year, adding a vehicle, still 157,500. So
Right.
it would still, it's not a lot of money, but I just want to reflect that.
Yeah, we don't think that is going to add a lot of mileage to what we're driving. I think we'll be
Adding
fine.
another cruiser won't add to that total?
Correct.
Okay.
Councilmember Hearn.
So just to go back to with the two deputy calls, so what happens currently then if we're in a situation where there is two deputies, and again, I don't know if this is, we can talk about it, but I mean, do they have to wait then to go to the call?
Depends what the call is. If it's occurring and it's violent, we have to go. We have to go in. If there's an active shooting, we don't get to wait. We have to go. We certainly seen those type of things in Florida where they waited and the bad, disastrous consequences. We don't have that luxury. If it's something that requires a two-person call, like mental health, it's a person in crisis. They're in there alone, but we got to go in and check on them. We'll wait. So whether that's the South Center car coming on over, or we have a North Center car as well, so that's 36, our own Litchfield. If they have to come down and help us, we'll do that as well.
And would we always be in that situation where we would only have the ability to send one, or is it only certain shifts that we run into that issue?
So we started, we just went to a 12-hour shift, and so we should be pretty good with 2 on for the most part. So
With
With
6 or
this-
with 7?
with 7.
With 7. And then if we went to 6, I guess then what is that once a day for an 8-hour shift or a 12-hour shift,
Potentially,
you're
yes.
short?
And then again, if someone gets a DWI, or they arrest someone, and then there's no one here, right? And that's not what we want.
I guess maybe just one more follow-up. How often has that happened over the past year? Is it a kind of a weekly occurrence? Is it a monthly occurrence, a daily occurrence?
Sergeant, you wanna,
Yeah.
you're in it every day.
As of right now, with that 12-hour schedule that we're working, between the hours of midnight and 6:30 in the morning, there's only 1 deputy on. So if we were to add one, we're on the 12-hour schedule, we'd be on teams. So we would increase our coverage and give us more times that we have at least 2 people on at every hour. There will still be a little gap in the early morning, but with the schedule that's proposed, it's going to increase the coverage and give us more people on, and even more people during our higher call volume times.
And I mean, is it happening quite a bit currently where you get these situations where 2 deputies should be going with current levels? Is that happening pretty frequently already?
Yeah, there's a lot of calls that 2 people should be going, and like the sheriff said, if they're in Lake Elmo and they get a call, depending on where our general car is, it could be a decent amount of time before the back arrives. Even with our neighboring agencies, Woodbury and Oakdale, depending on where the call is in Lake Elmo, if that deputy's alone, it's not uncommon for our neighboring agencies to have to come over and assist these deputies as well.
And again, just I guess to dig into a little more, again, is that like a daily thing that's happening, weekly, monthly?
It could be daily, it could go a couple days or It might not happen, but it's a common occurrence.
So like it's safe to say it's happening.
I would say yes.
Thank you.
And part of our
Yeah.
goal with all our contracts is to get to at least that two deputies on at a time. And that's what we've moved to with Hugo. And they're pretty much have 2 deputies on at a time. And the 12-hour shifts has really allowed us to have that team 2 on at a time around the clock.
I think that's really helpful information to know too, I guess I won't have to give too many more presentations is what it sounds like, but I think that is really helpful information to know for, when I saw these, I was, I'm very happy with the services that we have, and it feels like, the deputies are doing a great job, but understanding that we're putting you in a very dangerous situation, that's really helpful to know.
Well, certainly speaking for the city, we appreciate the partnership with Washington County. My time here, I've had Sergeant Erickson and Sergeant Jacobson, and they've been wonderful to work with and very helpful and present at our community events, and we think that bodes well for, whether it's the 4th of July or National Night Out, just having that exposure with the community to know that you guys are here and providing public service. So thank you very much.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
All right. Our next item on the agenda is CIP Project F-012 Ladder 1 Replacement Project. Chief is presenting.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Just wanted to take a little time tonight to kind of update you on this project and kind of where we're at, kind of how we got to where we're at. It's a big project, so I did feel it was important to kind of fill you in on our current status. This time last year is when we first started talking about this project and moving it up in the CIP 5 years. Again, our current ladder operationally, I feel it puts us at a disadvantage given its current length. And looking at the current build times and where our vehicle replacement schedule puts this truck at, I did request last year to move this truck up 5 years in the CIP plan, and to take most of '26 to kind of evaluate the market, the models that are out there, what's available to us with the budget that we proposed last year, and kind of move that forward. And today we're kind of at a point where we've basically evaluated 3 manufacturers and 5 total models with our truck committee. We set a truck committee of fire department staff and have been meeting since February. We've evaluated these 5 different models, these 3 different manufacturers, and trying to find what fits best for our department needs today and definitely into the future. We've looked at the Rosenbauer product, Pierce product, and E1. And what we've learned, it's definitely not apples to apples when you're looking at fire trucks, but it's definitely not apples to apples when you're looking at ladder trucks and platforms and all the different combinations you can come up with, right? Fire truck market's changed quite a bit over the past couple of years. When we set the budget last year, just to kind of throw a number out there really, based on information I had from other departments and their current builds and kind of where the market looked, we set the budget at 2.2 million as the absolute high end, right? It didn't mean that we were gonna try to squeeze, every cent out of that budget, and really tasked our truck committee to look at what was out there, what they feel as staff that they need to operate with, and how we can move forward, hopefully with a plan to ultimately purchase the vehicle that they spec'd out through this process. I bring up our truck, the current truck we have, it's a 78-foot stick. If this truck was 100 feet, like I know I brought this up last year, but operationally, it really puts us at a disadvantage being a shorter apparatus. That truck was spec'd in 2012, 2013, when there was a mindset in the city that we weren't gonna grow, we weren't gonna have development, and frankly, the highest building we'll ever see is High Point Surgery Center. So why do we need something at 100 feet? Fast forward to now, obviously our community's changing rapidly, and that really operationally puts us at a disadvantage with a truck that's that short. You don't build a fire truck or a ladder truck to reach your highest building, and you know, if we had a 200-foot building, it's not like we're gonna propose a 300-foot fire truck to get there. But we do feel that it's important when we're looking at the replacement of this we need that extra length and operational needs that come with that truck. So starting in February, our truck committee, like I said, met with 3 manufacturers and trying to figure out what's best. Our current truck is a single axle, which is great because it's pretty maneuverable. It's a compact truck. The wheelbase is short. It helps us navigate in town. What we've seen though, and what we hear from our maintenance provider, is there's a lot of weight on that single axle, and that puts a lot of wear and tear on the life of a truck. We've gone through 2 rear brakes on that truck in the past year, which is abnormal. But when we talk to our repair company, they're seeing more and more issues with single axle trucks, just because we're trying to maximize these single axles trying to max them out as best we can. So that's where we started to kind of go back and forth. Do we look at a single axle solely based on its footprint, or do we look at a tandem axle when we look at, you know, overall the wear and tear of the truck, how the truck performs? And frankly, when you go to a tandem axle, you do get into a more heavy-duty truck. It's able to handle quite a bit more. There are some limitations when you look at a truck of a single axle. Technology's gotten pretty incredible over the past few years with trucks, but there are some limitations. So we've been able to get hands-on on all 3 manufacturers and have the truck committee really go out and tour the majority of the trucks that we thought would fit within our scope of what we're looking at. We've been able to demo E1. They're a truck manufacturer out of Florida. We've been able to demo and get hands-on on the multiple Pierce products that were presented to us within budget. They're based out of Appleton, Wisconsin, and then we've looked at the Rosenbauer products that we're most familiar with, based out of Wyoming, Minnesota. Where we're at right now is getting feedback from my truck committee and the staff that ultimately use the truck. Their ultimate preference was, you know, they think they feel most comfortable moving to a platform type truck. That's your typical bucket truck that goes up, big platform tower, does all the same functions with spraying water and master stream out the top, but it gives you the ability to have a working platform for 2 or 3 firefighters, most likely 2, especially when you're spraying water, the ability to have a safe work platform. And, you know, that was the feedback from staff. Where I started the truck committee presentation was, we wouldn't even be in the room if our current truck was 100 feet. We would let that truck go as long as the vehicle replacement plan was, and we would just operate that. But when we started evaluating trucks and just knowing the differences, the added safety and workability of the platform kind of came into play too. And this is where things with the manufacturers changed dramatically, right? I mean, the E1 product that we look at is a single axle, straight stick, 100-foot apparatus. The Pierce products that we looked at, one was a 107-foot straight stick, single axle, and another one, they have a unique single axle with a platform. It's more of like a utility basket on the end of it, not a huge robust, but it's used by a lot of fire departments. We've been able to get hands-on it with some recent deliveries here in the metro area. And then we looked at 2 apparatus from Rosenbauer. Both of those, though, are tandem axles. One's a 109-foot straight stick, and another one's a 101 platform bucket. So there's a lot of differences. Pierce has a patent on a single axle with a bucket. So that's kind of their unique way of where they're at in the fire truck market. Rosenbauer used to have something like that, but then obviously when another company has a patent over some engineering, you no longer can manufacture that type of truck. So we use the truck committee to kind of evaluate a lot of different things and build out a spec of where we think we're at, giving what our needs are today and in the future. So going through things, our truck committee felt like they really are happy with the Rosenbauer product. We're fortunate to have a fleet that has a cab that basically would be utilized in almost all of our frontline apparatus. Going to a Pierce product wouldn't stray too far from, you know, a cab layout and what our staff are familiar with. The E1 product was a completely different product with cab design and layout that was vastly different than what we're used to. So we kept kind of, the truck committee kept leaning towards the Rosenbauer product, ultimately for what you can get for a tandem axle with a platform at its price point. Last month, when we were at the CIP workshop, I gave a brief update that working with the manufacturers, we're kind of getting that started at 2.2 million and kind of get down. I said, you know, our maximum at that point a month ago was 1.9 million, or 1.925, I think is what we needed a number and put that number in. Right now, I'm still waiting on kind of a final review of two things. The final spec from Rosenbauer and kind of an equipment list that we need to kind of build out that truck because it is a little bit bigger than our current truck. I don't anticipate this truck being over 1.9 million with equipment when it's all said and done from the Rosenbauer product. So it puts us at a ballpark where, again, when we're, you know, trying to compare trucks with the 4 other models that we've looked at, everything that we're seeing ranges from 1.7 million up to 2.2 million for the 5 models that we've looked at. Then the other difference is timeline. Rosenbauer is roughly 2.5 year build time for their tandem axle. If we were to look at a similar truck from Pierce, it's probably pushing 2.4 million given specification, and it's right now about 4-year build time. E1 has a similar, with a platform of build time, similar pricing. Now, because purchasing consortiums have become very popular and we're able to use them through Sourcewell or HGAC, pricing of fire trucks has become very similar. But Pierce has a market on their own Packard diesel motor that they only have access to. So it's becoming a little different to get, you know, a true apples to apples comparison. But I'd say the truck that our truck committee has kind of ended up with right now today, if we were to compare from manufacturers, you know, Rosenbauer looks like this one is right around 1.9 million, hopefully a little less than that. And I think for both E1 and Pierce, we'd be over 2 million for that same truck. With the time it takes to work with a manufacturer and frankly a salesperson, once we got some of the initial numbers back from the other manufacturers, from E1 and Pierce, I kind of just let those 2 sit out there, especially given feedback from my truck committee, whose, you know, work preference and operational preference was trending towards Rosenbauer. The base prices that I got from Pierce and E1, I definitely anticipate those rising as we were able to kind of tweak and adjust the spec to what we're looking for. So that's where we're at today. The truck committee's been working with, as a group, just to kind of dial this spec in and make sure that we're building something that we need, not something that we want, that nothing that's over the top, but definitely looking at the long range for what this community is going to need down the road. It's a big project, and that's why I wanted to spend some time tonight to just kind of fill you in and give you an update on where we're at, how our process has been working. You know, given our conversation tonight, I would like to come back in October for formal purchase to get ourselves in line and get an order placed so we get, you know, in line for the build, with still an anticipated delivery of 2029. But, you know, this is a big project, and I definitely want your feedback with that now that we actually have some much more concrete numbers and an idea of the direction that we are looking at. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Councilmember Craig. So you're talking about the tandem axle trucks. but you're saying they weren't as maneuverable? Would that allow you to get through some of these tighter streets, even with like future neighborhoods like Bridgewater
Yeah,
and stuff like that?
That's always, you know, that's kind of been the first concern of our, when, that was the first conversation we had. What do we look at for size of this truck? And we're always looking at maneuverability and how we get around town. The good thing is when we plan neighborhoods today, you know, I'm lucky to work with the planning department and, you know, we're able to utilize the fire code in a smart way and make sure that our road widths and our engineering behind these roads and road widths are able to, they're designed in a way to with emergency services in mind. There's no perfect scenario where we're gonna have the perfect scene that this truck's gonna be, you know, placed, positioned, you know, right away. We train, we teach our staff how to stage all their apparatus to make sure that there's always room for a ladder truck on these scenes. But one of the marks that are, you know, one of the things that stood out for my staff is we've been driving Tender 2, which has got a new home as of last week. That was a big tandem axle truck. And we've driven that in this city since 2006 when we took delivery. So that truck has been through old Lake Elmo, current Lake Elmo, and, you know, anything that we have. And when we started comparing turning radiuses and specs, the modern fire trucks turn a lot better than what that 2006 one. So that ultimately that didn't scare us away, and we were able to kind of get hands-on and get down to Cottage Grove and drive, you know, their truck and talk to other departments and kind of quell some of those fears.
Okay.
Just it's one of those things that I don't know if there's a perfect scenario for every neighborhood and every street, but you know, our truck committee felt confident that even going to a tandem axle that we've handled that before.
Okay. And have you had any instances with this 78-foot ladder that held you back where that extra 22 feet would have really come in handy there?
I don't want to sound extreme, but it feels like every time that truck's got to go up, we're at a disadvantage.
Okay.
4 years ago, we had a house fire on Little Blue Stem. Even backing that truck up into the driveway, we couldn't get to the other side of the house. That was post-major knockdown of the fire, right? That fire started on the outside. It was well involved, a lot of damage. We don't just look at tall buildings for the ladder truck, but just a single-family home with a pretty typical setback here in town. We lose a lot of reach just because we're farther away from the home. So a 40, 50-foot setback, 60-foot setback, we lose a lot of our operational vertical height with the reach. You know, it's not a smart move. If you talk about a commercial fire, we're never gonna put our truck right next to the building. So the math doesn't work out. You know, you start losing a lot of vertical reach. I look at what we're seeing now and what we're developing on Hudson Boulevard and to the south. Our ladder truck is maxed out. I mean, I want to try to be able to get on top of a roof structure on Crossroads East. You know, that building's 30 feet high, but if we're 30 feet away, you know, we're losing a lot of reach, and our capabilities become less and less the taller and taller that building gets.
Sure.
There's not a building, you know, we build a 7-story building, I'm not gonna sit here and propose a ladder truck that gets to the top of that one. Those, they don't exist in the US, right? Or
Yeah.
they do, they're pretty crazy, right? But we're maxed out. I think the Dorian apartment at its highest point on the northwest corner, when you look at the grade, it's 80+ feet. It's just gonna make it a challenge for us to do any firefighting operations when we're talking about getting to the top of these buildings for roof fires, or, you know, if we have to get up to windows for rescues. But our current one, we were maxed out the day we got it.
Okay.
And I think when I went back in time, I mean, the department's preference was to get 100-foot plus, and there was just a lot of negotiating back then, and, you know, I do believe they kind of settled on that, and that's just what the hand they were dealt back then.
Sure. One dumb question. Can you just swap out a ladder, like a 100-foot ladder, onto that truck?
I wish
Or is the
you-
truck kind
yeah.
of built around that
No,
ladder?
I wish we could. I would be proposing that right now, if that was something that we could actually do. The truck itself is engineered around the length of the ladder. There's a torque box that kind of does the most of the physics on that chassis. There's that chassis is designed for for that 78 foot, and you couldn't add anything more to that.
Got it.
But we also have to be very mindful of the amount of equipment that goes into it. Everything that we put on there is gonna add weight to that truck. Everything we do, from the crew size to how many people are in the bucket, the water we're flowing, every pound is added against that chassis and that design. So it's, on this truck in particular, it's very, we have to be very mindful of every pound we add to it.
Got it. Okay.
I think it's an awesome question.
No, it is. It's not a dumb question, not at all. I wish you could, and maybe, you know, years from now, that's something that manufacturers can do. But these are very different pieces of equipment.
Yeah.
The engineer told me that wasn't possible, so.
Could
It's
you
called
just-
torque.
Could you just elaborate a little bit on, when you say it's difficult to do some of these things with the ladder? You know, again, obviously, I'd love for you guys to have no difficulties with any of the jobs. But I think we're trying to balance what's difficult but doable versus, you know, what's impossible. And obviously, I don't want to put anybody at harm. I also want to be conscientious about spending $2 million if, I hate to say it, but if it's going to be a 1 in a million chance that we're, you know, missing out on by not making this $2 million purchase. I guess you can just elaborate a little bit on when you say it's difficult. Does that mean impossible? Does that mean, I guess, yeah, you can
Well,
just
I mean,
elaborate on that a little.
our department operations just have changed significantly since 2013. 2013, when this original truck was spec'd, the highest building in town was High Point Surgery Center. 2 stairwells and 3 stories, and that was it. We're seeing bigger and bigger buildings. You know, I know we have planning requirements, but I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing more that's taller than the Dorian, right? 3, 4 stories on top, and I think you're already seeing in Oakdale with 7, 8-story buildings, right? We've been able to utilize this truck in various ways, but when it comes time to put that aerial up and we have to use our master stream to try to get on top of a fire, most of our homes I can't reach the peak, just because it is short and the setback and how you lay out a scene. We're it. So what happens then is like
And that's for
single family
homes.
house fire. I mean, we've got plenty of spots in town that I know in Hidden Bay, Deer Pond, you know, with the tree coverage and all that a ladder truck isn't going to be able to even go up in the air, right? But the majority of our city, we're just so maxed out on that height. Little Blue Stem, that's when we had to bring in an excavator and tear down most of the house just to put the fire out. If we would have been able to get over that peak with a longer ladder, then we're able to do our, hopefully, firefighting operations a little more differently and a little more successful, without creating, you know, just a complete tear down in the moment. You know, regardless, if this project doesn't move forward, you know, we'll come back in 2032 and ask for an updated replacement at that time. And, you know, truck costs we've all seen are going through the roof, and
Yeah.
this $2 million ask is, you know, who knows what. I mean,
That's
Pierce
the-
has a pretty good, every quarter their prices go up 1.5%, and they're very clear about that, you know, so I mean, looking at where we're at operationally, where our future holds, and how long it does take for this, you know, the 5-year bump up, I hope isn't too much of an ask, but, you know, just trying to be mindful of where we're at with our operations.
Yeah, I think that's a tough part for me too, is, you know, when it's time to purchase the new one, like this is obviously the step we need to take, is going from the 78 to the 100-foot ladder. Unfortunately, it wasn't done previously, you know, because I'd rather be at a point right now where we're having the conversation of, let's go back and get this refurbished to last another 10 to 15 years, right? And now we're put in a situation where we've owned the truck for not even for 15 years, and we're having to talk about completely replacing it. I think that's where I'm struggling with this a little bit, is are we able to stick to the timeline of what was expected when this truck was purchased a little bit better? Do the risks outweigh the costs there? And I guess that's where I'm just struggling a little bit, because obviously the risk that we're talking about here is a pretty significant risk, and so I don't want to take it lightly. I'm struggling with that a little bit.
Well, and to spin off that a little bit too, is the 100-foot ladder gonna be obsolete in 15 years? Should we do a, longer ladder so we're covered at that 30-year mark, or?
Don't get
That's-
too much longer than that.
That's,
Well, you said
that's it right
109
now.
feet, so.
There's a few other types of trucks that are out there
Got it.
that are a little longer. There's a 115-foot that is
One
made
has
by.
a 137-foot ladder. It's the biggest one in the
They're,
United
they're
States.
very, yeah, but they're a very unique manufacturer. It's a unique piece of equipment. And frankly, I don't even want to know how much those things cost.
Well, I'm
So
just
I wouldn't
making-
come to you guys, but I just,
Just making sure the 100-foot is actually gonna be sufficient for what you guys.
I've been in the fire service for 22 years, and the 100-foot aerial has been kind of the king for that whole time.
Got it, got it.
Engineering-wise, I think that's just where they max out.
I think part of the constraints previously were the size of the garage. They added on to the old firehouse to be able to buy the last ladder truck to put in there. And I would assume that this is spec'd out that we wouldn't have any problems with what's being asked. So, and to the, it's been 13 years, so it'll probably be, if it's a 2.5-year build, you're looking at it being 16 years of service before the new one comes into play. I was a little surprised to see that the sale price would only bring in about 300,000 on that.
That's just my best guess.
Yeah.
It's really hard to go on
Yeah,
the used market and try
Yep.
to find an apples for apples comparison.
well, and especially
Um,
3 years from now.
Right. The feedback that I've gotten from our sales side of that is when I ask the question is it's the right color combination. Thankfully, we don't have yellow fire trucks. Those are tougher to sell. It's the right color combination. Hey, that's just the world we're in, the firefighter.
No dig on our
Yellow is not a
neighbor,
good
no
color.
dig on our
Nope,
neighbor.
nope. But we do our best to maintain it, and it should be very desirable on the used market. But I don't know what that looks like, and I wouldn't
Yeah.
know until we actually
It's hard to
put it out.
speculate that.
Yeah.
I imagine.
So what would be the cash flow on this? I mean, you have to have the $2 million up front to place the order?
There's no money down up front. With Rosenbauer, it's the same as our similar builds. Once the chassis arrives to the plant, we make a payment, and we
Okay.
actually get a discount because we're paying for that portion at that time. And then when the aerial, the ladder portion arrives at the main plant, there is another payment made. And then we also get, because we're paying for it at that time, there is another discount at that time that is available to us.
So we're not talking about spending $2 million in January. We're talking about spending it over the next 3 years.
No, frankly, I believe the chassis would actually probably show up at the plant in 2028. We'd be making payments in 28 and 29.
Yeah, okay.
2 payments probably in 28, or depending on how things felt, 1 payment in 28, 2 in 29, aerial and final payments.
So you mentioned 1.5% per quarter increase? Did
That
you-
was another manufacturer, that's Pierce.
Oh.
Again, everyone's pricing's a little different.
But
They-
let's say you had a 1% per quarter increase, whatever. Did you math out what that cost would make similar vehicle in 5 years of the current CIP? You know what I mean?
I haven't yet. I've
It's
just been
over
using
100,
today's
it's over
dollars.
100,000 a year on a 1.9 million.
Okay.
And again, even in just the past year, I mean, again, I came into this last year at 2.2 million, and when we started seeing numbers back, like, obviously there's been a lot of pushback to the fire truck manufacturers saying, why are they so expensive? Why is it taking so long?
Yeah.
And they're all making improvements and trying to show that they're improving on that. I just don't know what the market's gonna do in 3 years, because frankly, I didn't know what it was gonna do, you know, in the past year. And just what we've seen with our trucks over the past couple, like, I'm only gonna anticipate it's gonna get more.
Sure.
You put in this discussion of a mid-cycle refurbishment at 15. What does that look like, and what's the cost for that, and how do we then prep that cost?
I really do look at, again, I don't see, in my opinion, I don't know what else we're gonna really add to a ladder truck, okay? One of the newest things that we didn't look at from Rosenbauer is an articulating end to the boom. It's a great feature. It's new. I personally am a little leery of that until they get a few more years of maintenance on them on what that looks like. I really think that this truck is a 20 to 30 year truck. We maintain our trucks well, we train our staff to use them properly, and I would hope that a truck like this can last us a long time. Because 100 feet, nothing, I don't really anticipate that changing a whole lot in this truck's lifetime. I think we would be able to, at year 15 to 20, get it back in the manufacturer's hand, swap out hydraulic hoses, go through the truck, see what needs to be updated, repaired, replaced, just to save on the wear and tear, and go, that buys us another 10 years. And maybe it's, you know, 150,000.
If the build out is over 2 to 3 years, what's a refurbishment take?
Trying to think, you could probably plan that for about a 6-month period of time. You know, depending on what you're gonna do. You know, some departments go through and take every light out, every, you know, foot of cabling and wiring and redo it all, and it's a massive overhaul. Maybe our truck doesn't need that much, and
Yeah.
you know, again, it's just, I would anticipate, you know, being without a truck, if that was something to happen down the road, 6 to 8 months. You know, I think.
What do you do? Do you rent a?
There's
Truck during that time?
always, I don't wanna say there's always, but there is the possibility of getting our hands on another demo truck to fill that need.
Or
We
that's
had a
like what would have to happen during a refurbishment? You'd have to.
We had a unique issue here in the county a few months ago where Stillwater was getting some welds replaced. They actually had to wait for a whole new fly section on their ladder. They were out a few months. Oakdale's ladder truck was out for a few months for some painting, you know, like, it can take some time. We can rely on our neighbors, but then sometimes, like we experienced here in this county a few months ago, they weren't available from our neighbors. So, you know, if that was the route we were going, I mean, I would work really hard to try to see what's available to us for a demo unit or some sort of rental. And if the manufacturer can get their hands on something that was turned in, or that they've got a demo stock that they can get us for the period of time, kind of put some pressure on them to get creative too, to try to help us out.
Because is the refurbishment a lot of times used for fire departments where they maybe have 2 ladder trucks, and so.
Not necessarily.
No.
It's just a way to extend the life of it. You know, I think where we're at with some of these newer modern trucks, I think that's the way to go when you look at trying to extend the life up, right? And a truck like this that isn't seeing the daily abuse and wear and tear. I mean, an example I think I sent Matt on one of his questions today was, our ladder truck at 2014 has basically the same mileage and engine hours as our duty engine that we got 3 years ago. You know, so that duty engine's out on the road all the time. You know, we had to use our ladder truck for 2 years as kind of the first due until we got that truck in. But the ladder truck doesn't have the daily wear and tear as other trucks do. So not, and I personally haven't gone through a full refurbishment of an aerial truck to see what it would entail, but I guess it all depends on, at that point, 15 years from now, or 17 years from now, potentially, what that truck has gone through and experienced in its life.
But either way, it's a common practice. It's a à la carte type thing we can consider down the
We would definitely take a
road.
look to see what it needed and how we could extend that life. I think that's definitely viable for a piece of equipment like this. You know, there are definitely departments around here that, you know, have an engine like ours, and every 5 years, that new engine's coming. It spends 5 years on the front line, 5 years as a reserve, 5 years as a backup, and then it's gone. You know, I don't see us needing to get to that route, but wear and tear on vehicles is just, it's a different animal, so.
Where's the 15 years come from as far as for that kind of suggested replacement time frame or refurbish? I think I saw it, was it the?
It comes from an FPA. An FPA is just a set of guidelines and standards that we aren't held by law to follow them, but they are kind of the standard that we're trying to follow the best we can. It is a guideline. 15 years for us is totally different than 15 years
Because
for
the
St. Paul.
engine hours
Yeah.
and the use on it.
Completely, there's a lot of factors that come into that. I wouldn't sit here and say that every 15 years that it's got to be replaced, but, you know, we've been doing pretty good with our vehicle replacement at 20 years on most of our big frontline apparatus, and going, okay, what's the condition at 20 years? And frankly, unfortunately, fire trucks get beat up. We use them hard. They are not like you're, you know, pulling out of your garage at home, and, you know, the maintenance on them is different, and just, they take a lot of abuse. And I can stand here and our staff do a great job trying to maintain them the best they can, but they get beat up, and then that impacts the life of that apparatus.
Fire trucks aren't included, if I'm seeing this right, in our current vehicle replacement purchasing policy. Does that sound right? We don't have any policy set from a city standpoint.
I don't think they're in with the regular fleet.
It's just more like the public works.
Yeah.
Vehicles. Okay.
It's a little different animal.
Yeah.
So I guess for tonight, I'm just looking for direction. If I've given you enough information tonight to come back to you in probably the first meeting in October to review where we've ended up as a truck committee for this project. And in the meantime, if there's any other information that I need to get to you and provide or spend more time discussing with the council.
I guess, just to clarify, so you said with the quickest turnaround, company with the quickest turnaround, we'd be looking at 2.5 years? Was that?
Probably 2.5 years from time of purchase order.
And then kind of on the longer end, 4, was it? 4?
Mhm.
And as far as for if we ended up going with the one that was 4 years out, again, from like the cash flow perspective, when would that first payment be due? If it was the 4-year out option?
There are every manufacturer's got a little something different. We could negotiate other price points depending on how much money we're going to pay them at either time of signature or time of chassis arrival. But they all have some similar kind of discounting when pieces arrive at the factory.
And this number you put in here is accounting for some of those discounts?
The 1.9?
Yeah.
It does. There are some unknowns to that 1.9 when we're looking at the Rosenbauer product. I'm still tweaking the specification from them. We met with them yesterday, actually, to kind of dial that in, and waiting on staff to give me back kind of, here's where we are at for equipment. The nice thing is I don't believe our equipment needs are going to be, we're not upfitting a brand new truck from the ground up. We're taking 85% of the stuff off this one. This truck gives us a little more, the tandem axle gives us a little more space. Not that we're filling up all the space in the truck from day one, but it does, down the road, give us the ability to add some more equipment down the road when the time is right, or if the department deems it's necessary later on.
It's a big number.
It is, and I wanted to make sure that we talk about it now that it's not just some pretend number out there. These are, we're getting it dialed in as best we can.
Go ahead.
Obviously, this is something that needs to happen. It's the time frame for me, again, is where I'm kind of struggling, where, you know, I would have loved to see this be more of a 25-year item versus you know, even if it was at the 4-year out point here where it's a 16-year-old truck. I think this is something we really need to be paying attention to. So I guess, you know, if this is the direction we need to go, I guess I would just push for being able to get it signed as soon as possible, but delivered as late as possible, I guess would be, and payment as late as possible would be my preferred direction if we're gonna go this way.
It seems,
I think I understand there's difficulties, but I guess from what I've seen so far and from what we've been told, I don't think the risks outweigh the cost of waiting maybe 2 to 3 more years and putting this maybe closer to where it was originally expected in the CIP.
well, we're planning on the 2029 CIP, was planned to spend the 2.2 million in 2029. And so basically what we're doing, we're accelerating some of the spending by a little bit. That's basically what we're talking about.
Well,
Because we have
yeah, so
30
you have
months.
some payment for the chassis in 27,
More 28.
28.
Yeah.
So then 29 is where your cost was, but we had it in the CIP for 29.
Yeah, we had the CIP for 20, that's what it says here.
Is that right?
That's what we moved it up last year, 5 years. To
Yeah.
the 2.2 we moved up, and we did spread it out over, it was put in there as 28, 29 costs in last year's CIP, and that's what we've continued with so far in this year's CIP.
So
We've just
So
tweaked
from
those
that
numbers down
stand-
now that we have a different cost.
From that standpoint, then it's not a change from what we looked at in the CIP from last year, really,
no, it's not.
is what I'm understanding. I mean, did you do any sort of financial, how that impacts the city financially? Based on the timeline, I'm not,
We do a cash flow when we're doing the CIP. We work within our software to figure out what the cash needs are within that fund. And so I do have planned 2 interfund loans. So we would pick a fund that is sitting better than others, and we would just borrow money from ourselves. And then the vehicle fund levies would pay that back over time.
okay.
That's why I mean, I don't really see as much of a change from what we had originally planned.
I guess maybe my thoughts still though is, was the original plan right? In the
Well, I
sense
guess
of, was it needed in 2029, or could it have been pushed out to 2031, 2032? And again, I don't know what the right answer is there. That's what I'm trying to figure out, the risk cost analysis here of what is right. Again, when we buy these trucks in the first place, you're expecting 25 years is what we're 25 to 30 years. And so hearing that we're only getting 15 out of it is challenging to me.
That's something we've already, when we approved the budget, CIP with that in there, we kind of advised the department to go ahead and get a plan on that.
I'll say I begrudgingly approved it. I think I was on that side of it.
I understand that.
So-
Let's say you were a
Me too,
begrudger.
me too.
So,
No, and I understand that. I just kind of, I'm looking at my role as fire chief and looking at our operations and
and
what we need today
I
and
don't
in
know
the future.
what the,
appreciate
I
that.
don't know what the expected life was for the current ladder truck when it was purchased, because I wasn't involved in that discussion. You know, maybe it was 15, 20 years, I don't know.
that's a good point. I guess I don't know either.
Yeah.
I think the important question is whether it was 15 or 20 or 520, you know? Do we need this vehicle for the good of our city and our department? It was already in the CIP. We're not, you know, I think we're beating something we already talked about several times, and cash flow doesn't seem to be a huge issue on it, because we'll spend a little bit early in 2028, but I think we can make it.
Well, and really, what would be the benefit of pushing it out 2 years to 2031?
Well, this is where I think it's not, if we look at one specific item, that can always be the argument. But when we move things forward continuously, or if we say, hey, like, we could make every single vehicle last 1 year longer. We can make every single road last 1 year longer before we have to do the replacement. That's where it adds up.
Sure.
And that's my point is, yes, when we look at any individual item, it seems negligible. But I think we need to have a mindset shift of how do we, in multiple projects, extend it just slightly. That's my issue with this. Is like, I get that argument, but my counter argument is that's a pattern that we're following, and when we follow that pattern where we replace things a year earlier than they need to, when we
Yeah.
could actually maybe take it a year longer, over time that really adds up.
My only pushback on that is it's such a, such a large expense that it goes up 1.5% every quarter. Jeff, you said it goes up
100,000 a year.
100,000 a year, so we're adding $200,000 to it just because we wanted to wait and extend it a couple more years. That's personally why I would be in favor of just,
How
it's in
often
the
is that
CIP, we
brakes
just
been-
get it done.
How, you said you've had to replace the brakes twice?
We've had a unique deal with this single axle. We've done it twice in a year. And
In a
that is-
year?
That is abnormal, yeah.
What does that cost?
$7,000.
$7,000 a time?
And a lot of, the biggest piece to our maintenance costs is the labor involved with working on a large scale apparatus. And that's just kind of the downfall to not having our own city mechanic where, you know, we can kind of share some of those costs. It's the labor costs we have to pay, you know.
Yeah.
And it's, we do as much as we can in-house. Can't do brakes on a fire truck.
I just did brakes on a car a month ago.
Gladly doing
Yeah, I don't know if the
that.
staff
Tires are a
trusts
little
you
more
to
than the
change.
Tires I just replaced.
Yeah.
That's slightly more.
I don't think Chief's gonna trust you on that one.
Again, we have it in the 2029 CIP, we approved that. We're talking about spending a little bit of money in 2028, so
And
we
if-
can actually get it in 2029, or probably 2030, depending on how long it takes, 30 to 36 months.
And you've got that covered with an interdepartment loan, so it's really already accounted for financially?
Yep.
Okay.
And the
With it.
only two things I have is I agree with Matt in terms of, at the macro level, I do want us to be reviewing our policies, whether it's this fall, this winter, next, whenever it is. How can we start extending, whether it's our Mitsubishis, whether it's our public works equipment? Because yes, it does add up when things are purchased earlier and earlier. In this specific case, I will then do the opposite side of the coin. We're replacing something that shouldn't have been purchased.
Well,
Here's the wrong one that was purchased to begin with.
at the time, right? It might have been the right thing to purchase.
Correct.
So you can't say it was.
They're
wrong
they're off by a year. If they had purchased it a year
Whatever.
later, when the lawsuit was lost, hopefully they would have done something different. So it was
Makes sense.
90% wrong.
So, I guess I haven't heard of other instances where we're pushing fleet purchases a year early. Are we? I mean,
Where I'm-
We've been extending,
We've been
actually, so
extending
like the building vehicles.
building
we've got- They were originally in the plan for 5 years. We've pushed them down to what, 7
We're
and
like
8?
at 8
That's
and
where I
9.
think that's something we need to review. I think the vehicle
I agree.
replacement policy, it was based off of a MnDOT study on 4 vehicles that are probably not relevant to a lot of the vehicles that we're using, that we're basing vehicles that are totally different than the vehicles that were in that report. And I think, you know, that report has a calculation that was used, but then at a bare minimum, I think we should be using that calculation that was in that report to show that, you know, even though the report suggests, I don't even think the report suggested the years that we have in ours. I don't know where the connection is,
but
honestly.
to your
between those
point,
two.
what I just heard is they're being pushed to 7 and 8 years instead of the 5. So that's
Which is great. I don't know
extended,
what, but I don't know what the decision is for that, right? Whenever I see items come up on the CIP, it says, hey, you know, this is being brought up because of, it's met
The
the years of
policy.
expected in the policy, right? And that's what I see.
Yeah,
And so if we're gonna be presented with that information, I wanna make sure then that data is really relevant to the vehicles that we're applying it to.
when I've worked with fleet managers previously that probably have larger fleets than we have, and maybe the fleet manager at the sheriff's department or the county would have a better idea, but, you know, things that go into it are your mileage, your maintenance, your repairs, as well as the resale value at auction level, right? So once you hit a certain level, diminishing returns on, it gets more exponential, right? The later it goes. So there is that sweet spot. And I'm not saying 5 years is the right number. Maybe it's 10 years. I don't know. Based on the mileage that we put in
Well,
the
it's
city
just
where they're
like,
building
for
inspection.
example, like if you throw the fire truck into it, it says you should never sell it, basically. Right, if you put into the, I don't know if I'm saying the
with the
term right,
mileage.
the stochastic method that they use, it says you should never sell it.
The what method?
I don't know, probably saying it wrong, but the stochastic.
Stochastic.
That's-
New word
I'm
for
probably
me.
saying it wrong.
Are you being sarcastic?
No, I'm being serious.
He's
That
being
is the
stochastic.
equation that, yeah, that's the equation that they use in it. And when it goes again to, there's different methods that are used by different
I guess I'm
industries.
agreeing
different-
with you. You know, I'm like, yeah, I don't know what that number is.
Mayor and council, I might propose that.
Stochastic, did I say it right?
Staff can take a look at the vehicle replacement policy, but.
Excuse me, can you speak up, please?
Staff can look at the vehicle replacement policy, but for a timeline on that, I would ask that we can take a look at it next year.
Yeah, that's
Due to
fine.
our time, budgeting and all that, so
Yeah.
we have it on the list.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Should have ran again, dang
You should have. You really wouldn't have had to work that hard. Either one of you guys. All right.
Do you have your feedback?
Sorry. Mayor,
What?
Point of personal privilege?
I hydrated really well.
Yes, okay, point of privilege, we'll take a,
Take 10 seconds.
5-6 minute break here.
Mayor?
One way to
This guy
say
got a lot
it.
of t-shirt.
It's been a while, but I did the
Are you
three
trying to do
days
well?
with the city of St. Paul Police Department.
Yeah.
And there's a process you use.
I love
to
it.
determine when is the optimum time to replace the vehicle.
I am
It's
like,
just been a while since I.
perfect.
I did it, when I worked in Anoka County, our guy did that, Anoka County Sheriff's.
Oh, yeah.
Charles said so. You are going to school.
What the mayor says goes.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Did
What
you
up?
see your stuff back there?
Already?
Yeah, I know. Sometimes it's just throwing my old sweatshirt, snow blowing, shoveling,
We always have it in our office.
Yeah, we shut our.
I probably shouldn't change.
Yeah, I just.
Yeah.
That would be awkward.
Yeah, that's gonna be my garage sweatshirt.
Yeah.
Pretty much always there.
It was nice to see 36 come back.
Because I wasn't.
Because it's not just crap dirt, like it's specific types, like where'd you get that?
You're bringing it in, you know? So.
Because you gotta do it from a near.
It's all,
Still got a ways
I mean,
to
look at
go.
an aerial in West.
They had the ghost figures up there.
That'd be mine.
But
Yours is behind you.
you know, Jeff, there's time-lapse cameras on the county's website you can watch.
See
He was talking.
I know. I
Is
think
it like
it's
pick up a
vein or something.
Yeah.
As soon as I heard
I wanna see that.
Period.
I
I mean, on
See
the
some
street.
sitting in my truck, if you're in your truck, you see some people doing it.
Yeah.
Well,
So
I
I
wanna
wonder
see-
if that thing has a way of like
Oh, we've been here.
picking up a signal or something.
Well, I suppose they have to get the camera, these people say, I was on my phone, I say, well, we
Yeah, they just need to be able to see that.
we got a video of you
Jason,
trying
you got a
to.
scope come in?
But what if your phone is below window height and you know,
Going back up,
Yeah.
north next week.
I was just looking at the shifter down.
Yeah.
Jump back into the meeting here. The item number 4 on our agenda is draft 2027 budget and levy and ongoing strategic financial planning.
Thank you.
A lot to say.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So our discussion topics, as you mentioned, are, we're going to just touch on our strategic financial planning, discuss the 27 budgets, draft budgets, and then, of course, the 2027 proposed levy. I assume everybody read their packets and got to the punchline at the end, which is the
There's a
levy.
packet. Just kidding.
Which is the levy increase. So I just want to point out that this discussion is a starting point. Everything's, we essentially kind of put together all our numbers. We plug in our strategic planning numbers that we've been working on for the capital stuff. And so we're bringing to you our starting point. We are always incorporating new information in our strategic financial planning. We're going to try and nail that down next month so that I have it ready to send to the rating agency for our bond rating. But there's a lot of kind of moving parts. I also wanted to just mention one thing that I didn't really put in my packet, but just wanted to kind of drop it into the conversation, is that one of the things I really dislike about when we pay so much attention to the levy increase is that lens presumes that where we are today is the correct baseline. And so I just want us to kind of think about, as we're reviewing this, and remember that we are in a strategic mode. We're trying to figure out what we should be at. Obviously, we can't fix what happened in years past, but we can take the responsibility of getting us to a better position today while we are in our chairs. So, okay. So objectives, learn about some of the proposed changes to operations in the budget for the next fiscal year, kind of gauge how that budget and the levy changes fit into our high level and long-term goals, and then provide staff direction for making any revisions in preparation for adoption of the preliminary levy in September. That levy, as a reminder, can be decreased. It cannot be increased before our final adoption and certification in December. I put in a slide with a summary of the core strategies and strategic objectives that were adopted back in early 2025 for our 2-year strategic plan. I'm not going to run through all of those, but, and then just kind of pointing out again how our short-term goals, how our short-term goals affect the budget, and pretty much everything gets affected, affects this budget. So anything that we plan for in development, any of our financial strategies, capital planning mostly, staffing levels, service delivery, facilities planning, all of it affects the budget, hence my push for the strategic financial planning. So what is strategic financial planning? I love my puzzle slides, so I'm going to go through those again. It's essentially a plan. We're trying to set goals and implement strategies. We call it a plan. It's more of actually a guide and just kind of an informant. We want to see opportunities and problems well in advance, and we just want to be able to provide some financial insight into big decisions moving forward. So we essentially have all of these puzzle pieces that make up the city of Lake Elmo, and we just have to figure out how they all fit together and financially. So we're taking a bunch of policies, practices, and making some assumptions. We're trying to project our money in, our money out, our cash, our debt, and we're trying to do this across the long term. Just a recap for our financial, or our CIP discussions. So these 5 items are our high-level priorities and objectives that were drafted, that will be in the final strategic plan that I will bring forward. So during the CIP discussion, we really talk a lot about A, B, and C. So debt management, levy strategy and revenue stability, trying to get our capital levies to a point that will support the capital purchases that we need to make in the future. And then keeping abreast on our capital planning and infrastructure investment. Just a reminder also, as far as those capital levies go, there has been very little capital levying done in the past, which did lead us to the high debt levels that we have today. So we had some transfers to the vehicle funds. We started having separate capital levies in 2025. We just went from the 5-year CIP to the 10-year CIP 2 year 2024. And so we're really catching up on some of that capital stuff, which leads into the levy discussion, really. Again, just recapping the capital and project levies. Okay, so going into operations, same priorities. We're going to focus a little bit more on levy strategy and revenue stability, and this really is hitting the budget sustainability and service levels a little bit more. So levy strategy and revenue stability, there's a chart, hold on. So this is my projected tax levy. There's still a lot of work to do here, but this is essentially what we're trying to do. We're trying to figure out what our levy looks like going forward, and it's a challenge. So we are a growing community. We have increasing needs. We have development revenues right now, which are great, but we will see those decrease and essentially cease by, remind me,
Like
10,
15 years.
15 years. So part of our strategy is trying to work our way toward what we believe is sort of this optimal or long-term tax levy rate range for when that development stops. I have proposed as an option to kind of meet that goal is to wean ourselves off of 70% of our building and planning revenues over the next, 7 years, I looked back, by transferring that out of the general fund and supplementing with tax revenue. This just kind of creates this buffer. When we do start to lose that revenue, we would have that in a separate fund, and it also is just sort of leading us up into that later, the levy that we expect without having it be a great big jump right at the end.
Can I just ask a question on this? As
Sure.
you presented, I was thinking of it. So with the development revenues, typically, so like if there's a neighborhood developed, the development revenues come in the year that they're being built. So like, let's say a house was finished being built in 2026, somebody buys that house, the development revenues were paid that year, but there would be no tax. They're taxed at a decreased rate in that first year typically on like a new house built. So wouldn't the tax levy the next year, I'm gonna say this, wouldn't the revenue from their property tax make up for the development revenue from the year before? And if, does that, sorry, maybe I didn't ask that very well. As they're building their property, they're building their house, the development revenues are coming in, but there's no tax revenue, or if there is tax revenue, it's significantly decreased because the value of the property is much less than when the house is there and developed. And so the next year when that house is no longer paying the development revenue, but they're now paying a higher amount of tax, does that not offset?
No, not
That
nearly.
difference.
The amount of the development revenue, so building permits and planning fees amount to roughly
Single-family
4,500.
homes, about 4,000 for a permit, and about 8,000 for sack and whack.
Sure.
Okay, yeah. So that makes, I'm just trying to think back, because like when we purchased our house, I remember it was like it was a several $1,000s difference between the first year what we got assessed versus the second year when we were just assessed on the property of the land.
Yeah.
So, okay, I was just trying to understand, are they actually a wash? But it sounds like it's probably about maybe half.
I think you would take almost 8 years to recover that, but then also increase services, right? I mean, so I don't know how you would factor that, but.
Or, you know,
Yeah.
so like the amount of taxes that house is paying from year one, let's say is $1,000, and then they add the value of their house the second year, now they're paying $3,000 in taxes. So they're paying $2,000 more in revenue, or the city's getting $2,000 more in revenue than the
Well,
year
the city's
before.
not getting all of it.
That's true. Go to county and,
County, schools,
Yeah.
everything, cities, I don't know, we're 30%, or haven't looked at what percent we get, but we're probably about 30% of the revenue coming to the city from property tax on a home.
okay, sorry, that was just,
Sure. Okay, so that was part of that proposed strategy. One other.
One thing, going back, if we expect revenues to taper off after 10 to 15 year, why are we set a 5-year plan to get the revenues?
It was actually 7, sorry, I typed that in there. My thought was that if you can ease yourself into it, it's not such a big jump, and while also you're building sort of this reserve fund that would then buffer, so you could essentially inject money back into the fund to buffer operations while you figure out what, for instance, so if you're in a slowdown in 15 years and you go from, let's say $500,000 down to $100,000 in permit revenue, do you lay off a planner or a building official if you're not sure what's going to happen in the future? So then it's kind of this, you're buffering a little bit. But go ahead.
We had the development revenue substantially decrease in 10 to 15 years, but we have a 5-year strategy to generate the replacement revenue. That was my question.
Sure.
Maybe we could,
Are you saying space it out over 15?
phase it out the one. We don't know really when the development will stop either, right?
Right, exactly.
That's the unknown. Is
Right.
it 10 or 15, but things go to hell in a handbasket, it could be, 3.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
so.
Okay, I get your
again,
logic.
So, now I forget where I was here. Service levels, operations, again, kind of, the growing community is always going to be one of our challenge. And so part of that is this question of what is our optimal service levels and how do we sort of try and level out our budgets based on known and unknown changes in staffing. So just touching on, I mean, you guys know kind of our current strategies are using professional studies to assist in determining appropriate staffing levels. So we just had the study done for Public Works. We also backfill with contracted services in a number of areas and then hire internally when there's a clear benefit to do so. Another one of our strategies is to gauge community satisfaction with current service levels. So we will be doing did the community survey?
No,
Not
still
yet.
the-
We will be doing the community survey to just give us feedback, like is there room for growth or are we doing well? Can we cut? Whatever. And then just better understand the cost of service. Our new software is allowing us to do much more detailed budgeting within that, provides easier access to financial information to staff. We are estimating future operating costs, but it's a very difficult process to do a really long term. So I have some assumptions, but we would have to do, like the fire study that you had mentioned would give some intel as far as what service levels in the future might be. So again, projected tax levies, I put this in there. However, we know there's a lot of work to be done to better understand the long-term impacts on the general levy. We feel like we've got our capital levies are getting, like we're really starting to dial those in pretty well. But the general levy is definitely something that we will be working more on. So the point of that first part of this discussion is to remind you that we are strategically thinking about all of this stuff long-term instead of just, this year-to-year change. So are there any questions or feedback at this point? Checkpoint 1.
Well, I think that's a good point too of what you were bringing up of if the revenues are dropping for the services, right? Those service revenues are intended to cover the cost of the employee that's doing those services. Is correct, right? When the idea of charging for a permit is to charge for that time that it requires of our staff to do that. And so if we're not bringing in those revenue, then what is that staff doing? I guess if we get to that point, I guess my question is that factored into, once that revenue decrease drops because of decreased development, are we factoring into that? That is probably going to be a time where we do have to look at changing staffing levels, or is that not factored into these long-term?
Into the long-term tax levies? No, I haven't gotten that. We haven't been able to dial in that much of the change in staffing relative to that type of stuff. So I would say that those are the part of this iterative process with the strategic financial planning that we will be doing. This is essentially a living document. The more information that we get, we will attempt to plug in.
I mean, I personally think that would be something very worthwhile including into the planning.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something we can find out from other cities where we know there are first-ring suburbs especially where their growth slowed? It might have been the 80s, might have been the 90s, and those revenues did stop. How how did that impact the work demands, especially for the inspectors? Because certain inspections will, there'll
Yeah.
always be deck
It's gonna be there.
permits.
Yeah.
There'll always be basement permits, but for new construction, for those things, obviously the demand will go down. I'd just be curious, like, to that point, how can we utilize that to add to the workload on the projections? But that's a pretty bit, between compensation and full-time salaries, might be 75 to 100K a year, 10 years from now, first position. So
I mean, we've talked about it a little bit. I mean, we talked about, reduction of an inspector, just looking at options. And also when it comes to these developments, you're looking at, a lot of the developments are being processed by, consultant services, Bolton and Mink planning on the planning side. So I would assume that would just go away because we wouldn't need it. So that's kind of cost savings right there. That's substantial. So I mean, we're pretty, I wouldn't say short-staffed, but if you start looking like long-term at a city that's 25,000, we don't have a lot of staff. So you need people there just to be able to process conditional uses and things that come in. But from the building side, obviously we want to stay with the building official, inspector, because when we didn't have that and we were consulting that out, it was a substantial amount of money to go outside. So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at thinking about it, and we can definitely look into it more and talk about it more. But
I think it'd be worth looking into more, because, I mean, otherwise we're taxing people now for something that they may not need to pay for, that may not need to be paid for in 15 years from now.
Right.
But again, that's without, it would be worth knowing more information of if we ended up contracting that out, because there's so little compared to what there is now with the development. And I don't know what that is, but I think it'd be worth knowing.
So, in my first term, we didn't have a building official, and we were hiring out a consultant to do that. When you looked at the price of the consultant versus having somebody on staff that did that, it was 3 FTEs that we could absorb for that cost of the consultant. So the press was to make sure we got somebody on staff to do that, so we could shed that extra work. And so I think what a lot of organizations or agencies struggle with, right, is you have high points and low points, and we'll probably experience those. So you want to right level your staff for that median. You use the consultants in the private sector at the high points, so that hopefully when it goes down, you're still in that right size. And it's kind of a guessing game at that point, because you don't know what's going to happen the next year. But certainly at some point, we should be at an area where it's more standard level inspections for decks, patios, pools, things of that nature, right?
And we have a plan of that. It's called our our comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
I mean, we put a lot of thought into it, and that tells us what we anticipate for building. Granted, it's not etched in stone, didn't come down from heaven, but I mean, if any financial plan we have, our plan should all be consistent with one another.
Right.
If our comp plan says we're gonna build 50 houses a year for the next 10 years, then we ought to have a financial plan that supports that activity and need and recognizes those revenues.
Yeah, so I think understanding what the staffing plan is for 15 years from now needs to coincide with what our strategic plan is saying.
Exactly, they all gotta fit together.
I want to add on, so slide number 11, it's just about the strategic goals. And I'd really like to add into priority objective B, expense stability as well. This is something that I've obviously harped on quite a bit. I feel like we spend a lot of our time talking about the revenue side, and not enough of the expense. And I think part of that is human nature. We want to always be doing more and doing better, which is human nature. But I think the tough thing is with government, that's not always necessarily what we need to be doing if the services are good enough. And so I really would like to include expense stability in there. And maybe not expense stability, maybe that's not the right word.
Was that in D with budget sustainability?
I-
No, was
That's
that
what I
different?
was trying to get to, budget sustainability and service levels, tying the budget to service levels, which are always going to be dependent on the council that is elected, right?
Right.
And so, the levy strategy and revenue stability is really about the money coming in. And the budget sustainability and service levels is about the money going out. So whether or not
So maybe I'd like.
stability, so I guess I would worry about how someone is interpreting or how the strategy of expense stability is interpreted from a strategic standpoint, because flatlining expenses isn't even, it's not possible,
I don't know how to
right?
put it. I'd like
Yeah.
one of the objectives to be more thoughtfulness around decreasing expenses. Or more focus on the expense side of the ledger. And how do we decrease expenses, or how do we minimize the growth of increase? I think it has to be in there. And I don't know if budget sustainability, when I hear budget, I'm thinking money in has to match money out, is what I think.
I've got, these are like the summary titles of the actual, like, there's more words behind these words, so maybe I'll just review those and see if I can see if that kind of comes together a little bit more.
Because I just would like to set that direction from council to staff to say that is a priority and that is important. Because again, I think a lot of times of our fault, we say, hey, we want to do these things. And sometimes we need to be reminded that we don't just need to do more, right? Do we need to go from a 1 minute and 50-second response time per fire to 1 minute and 45 seconds? You know, if that's going to cost us $300,000 a year. Again, is that necessary? Going from 4 minute to 2 minute was absolutely worth it, right? And so I want to make sure that is a priority, that we're always weighing those expenses and trying to. We talk about revenue stability a lot, but I don't feel like we talk enough about keeping the expenses at a reason.
Isn't that long-term fiscal health?
I don't know what that could mean. Debt.
Well, no, we have debt management and long-term fiscal health. I mean, long-term fiscal is controlling expenses and, you know, and managing revenue, so you have a good, you know, fiscally healthy operation.
Okay, I'd like to see the word expense in there. Maybe that's what it is. We have revenue.
The addition would be that Councilor Hearn knows how to expense his time.
To make the most out of my salary here. I'm gonna minimize it right now.
All right, got lots more to go. You ready? Okay. Okay, so 2027 budget, just kind of a recap of how we look at these. So we have the joy of working within fund accounting. So we have kind of two main focuses: the governmental funds. For us, in this discussion, this is the general levy, which takes into account the the general fund operations of 101, the debt service funds, and the capital funds, so the capital levies. We also have our proprietary funds, so our water, sewer, and stormwater, and I have those broken up into operations, debt, and capital projects. So for the purposes of the next section, we're going to focus here on this side and largely on this little column here and largely on that little red spot right there. So that's our focus. So our budget process starts fairly early in the year, and even in prior years. I try to sort of summarize it as a thoughtful process. I think all of us are very responsible about how we deliver create our budgets. We draw on our knowledge and experience. We use existing city policy and practices. We try to understand, kind of what council's goals are, and then making estimates for near future market changes. So we're budgeting, sometimes I'm developing budgets in, May of 2026 for something that we're not going to pay for until November of 2027, for instance. So again, starting in the spring, we had some changes this year. We've had our new software. Kudos to all of our staff for learning my new favorite thing in the world. So I think it made the process easier in some ways, but again, it's a new tool to learn. We also are incorporating the strategic planning side of things, and then also trying to do a little bit more of the projecting of current year and amendments. So we're looking at the first draft here tonight. We will adopt the preliminary levy in September. We will continue making minor revisions as we have them through the fall, including some fairly major changes such as open enrollment that happens in November, and our insurance, what is that thing called that we just did? Appraisal could change our insurance rates. And then we will adopt our final budget and levy in December, and potentially be making amendments to the 27 budget within 2027. So this is a breakdown of our general fund expenditures in 2026 for the adopted budget. So roughly a quarter in general government, roughly half in public safety, roughly a quarter in public works. I will be bringing forward an amendment as I was going through, the strategic financial process and then the new budgets. We're really going to try and pull out some of the general fund project expenses, the 180 acres, the fire station, the comprehensive planning. It just really, there are a bunch of project type expenses that sort of make it difficult to compare year to year. So for 2027 requested, we had some pretty significant increases in fire and police, so that is bumping public safety up quite a bit. You can barely see the changes here, but I threw it in there. So this is comparing 26 budget, 26 amended and or projected, and the 27. I just talked about this. So moving general fund special projects to a separate fund for better year-to-year comparisons within department budgets. The strategic plan, I would propose some transfers to those project and capital funds to bring our general fund balance down. We were, after the 2025 audit, we were sitting at 140%. So I'd like to move some of that into the capital funds. Decreasing expected building and planning revenues based on some more updated projections from community development, and then adjusting various other expenditures and revenues based on some decisions that were made and to reflect some actuals that we have. So for 2027, here's kind of our high-level changes. We added some positions. So the 3 fire captains started in 2026 for half a year, so they will be a full year in 2027, so that will increase that budget. We added an additional public works, fireworks, I almost said, public works lead that is starting in 2026. And then we will have an additional public works operator proposed that would start in 2027. Our salary and budget benefit assumptions are relatively the same as other years. So we assume a 3% COLA and calculate any steps. We have the wage study that's been done, that's sort of out there. You guys, I believe, will be talking about it next week.
That's correct.
In a closed session. So that is not included in the department. Oops, can I have your battery here? Do you have your power? So that's not included in the department budgets. I created a contingency line for that specific study, so we added that in. We added the potential for PTO and ESST payouts. So we have a policy wherein you can have up to 40 hours of your PTO cashed out into a, where does that go?
Deferred comp.
The deferred comp.
Or HSA, 40 hours over the max carryover.
Right. And we had never budgeted for this in the past. We also, and the state also added the ESST policy. We had never budgeted for these payouts in the past, and so there were, I think a couple departments went over on wages for that reason.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the acronym ESST. I may have heard of
Just
it.
like at the same time.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I added in some budget for that. That does not guarantee that these people will actually take the payout. I essentially kind of took the people that I knew typically would have a payout. We have, usually fire has a hard time using up their PTO, so they do. And then some people that have just been here longer and haven't managed to take a vacation this year. That's me. So we did add that in just to be a little bit more cautious with that. Health insurance premiums, we have a tentative 20%, and it sounds like that's pretty consistent with other cities and what our insurance broker has stated as well. Special projects, again, moving some of those to the 401 project fund. Some of our projects that maybe we had planned for in 2026 won't all be done in 2026, and so that also will be part of the amendment, kind of recognizing that we're not going to do these this year, but we're going to add it into 2027 instead. We have some savings in IT hardware because we have fewer computers this year. And then again, we've got this insurance valuation process underway right now. So we've tentatively added 15% for that. So overall.
What are things that impact our insurance valuation?
Any building. All buildings. They looked at every single building we have, and like all the well houses and,
Yes.
yeah. And so like every single utility structure
Okay.
was evaluated. So, here. So again, I tried to show the budget as well as the projected, and then 2027 requested, the change from the projected, and then the percent change. So we're looking at total revenues next year of 10.2 million compared to expenses of just about 10.1, leaving us a net of 143. This is for that proposed strategy to start moving the building and planning revenues for that purpose. So we can always revise that. Also taking into account the transfer of out of the general fund into some capital funds. So. Okay, so going into kind of these different segments, so general government covers the mayor and council, administration, elections, finance, planning, and engineering. So we're looking at some changes. In 2026, we added the community event, which had not been originally budgeted for, and then, again, moving some special projects. And then 2027 changes, the council wage increase for the first time in 13 years. And then proposed changes to a couple of planning positions have been penciled in. For public safety, this includes police. Prosecution is largely counterbalanced with revenues in that segment. Fire department, building inspection falls under public safety, technically. We have emergency communications and animal control.
What is the emergency communications? Is that the radios and things like that, Chief?
That's mainly our outdoor warning sirens.
Okay.
There's monitoring involved in that. The biggest increase for next year is preventative maintenance for the 9 siren sites. It's something we've been trying to manage our own repairs, but we're kind of exceeding the scope of what we can do internally.
Sounds like you need an engineer. Electrical, anybody? Yeah. Okay, so 26 adjustments include just moving some special projects to the 401 fund, and then 27 changes. So the Sheriff Starry presented that information. Second half of the implementation of the 3 fire captains, and then some improved budgeting for the paid on-call fire training hours. For Public Works, we've got street and parks in the general fund. So the 26 adjustments are some additional engineering and utility costs. Park donations were removed. We had a park revenue and a park expenditure. It doesn't sound like either of those things are happening. And then we are adding that lead position in 26. For 27, again, the added Public Works operator. We've got some small equipment purchases. We're restocking salt. Didn't have much for salt purchases this year at all, so 2027 is going to be a really significant
Yeah, it's gonna be
increase.
Up there, because it's been small amounts, like 20 ton a year. And they had 2 sheds, which they utilized, and I'm trying to get down to at least 1 shed, so we're going to burn through what we have this year, then restock.
Okay. Fuel prices increasing. We added some engineering and then some park maintenance. Okay, so again, we've got our fund accounting, our main purposes. I just wanted to mention that within Public Works, we've got the general fund departments, streets and parks, but then Public Works also does water, sewer, and stormwater. So I wanted to just give a perspective of what that sort of whole department as a whole looks like, adding in those departments. So total of 5.6 million, about a 10% increase. I will also mention, when we're looking at budgeting for staff time within Public Works, we budget using an allocation table, and it's even by individual, but they actually book their hours with the actual work that they do. So we budget for one thing, but then they're, like if there aren't any snowstorms, and the street hours might be way lower than what we had budgeted for. So just as an FYI. So this is the kind of split when we do take into account the utilities as part of Public Works. So this is all of our operations expenditures.
And I should know this, but when Public Works staff is doing work on a water utility or a sewer utility, I assume we're drawing funds from the utilities to pay for that specific salary time for that time spent?
Yeah, because when they do their time payroll or time cards, it's billed to that
Oh, yeah.
department. So it'd be water, sewer, storm.
So when they're filling that out on that device, that's the data source to make sure that it's differentiated correctly? All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep. Okay, so just as a recap, I wanted to point out kind of some of the highest increases. Sorry to pick on you yet again. We had Public safety, 15% increase there. We've got Public Works, 16%. We've added this contingency, so it sounds like that might be a little lower than what we had originally planned, so that might come down. Our total change right now is at 1.4 million in the expenses, so roughly 16%. I also want to point out that we've got that net of 143,000, so if that policy goes away, then that would change as well.
Question.
Yep.
Because in the contingency, seeing that in there, in past budgets in 22, 23, 24, did we put in a specific contingency as a line item, or was it just incorporated in budgets generally at the micro level?
We had a contingency line for a while, and we never really use it. It's not somewhere that you actually like put an expense. So I would say if we're using contingencies in the future, and this, I don't want to confuse everyone too much, but it could be for like making sure that there's money in the budget and we just don't know where the shift in costs is going to be like. So if we had a contingency, then we can kind of redirect that money to the, based on the changes or the decisions that were made mid-year. There's also the idea of having a contingency so if our fund balance was down closer to our policy, 50 to 60%, but our revenue or our expenses, our budget for the next year is significantly higher than the current year. Because we're comparing our fund balance to the budget and that budget is increasing, you have to make sure that your fund balance actually increases. And the only way to do that is to make sure that you have a surplus planned, and you would do that kind of within that contingency line. It gets really kind of complicated.
I understand the purpose of contingency at the macro level and micro level. I guess I would be curious, technically, if you didn't have it, you would just be depending upon the fund balance, correct?
Right, correct.
And in this case, the 250 is 250 that's coming out of a levy.
Yes, so we plugged the 250 in here specifically for the wage study that we don't have any idea what we didn't have the information in time, and there's no easy way to plug it into the department budgets within.
So in this case, it's partial contingency is partial placeholder.
It's definitely 100% placeholder, this
Okay.
particular contingency.
Like
So
usually just-
when
I mean,
we.
the confusing part is usually placeholders have just gone in to that department, right? Like I remember when we were talking about we might hire another public works person. I feel like it just got put in
Right.
to there
We just don't,
directly.
I don't have that data. So you just got the wage study information last week or whatever. So it just wasn't here in time in order to plug it into the departments themselves. So purely a placeholder. As soon as we get direction from council about how, what that is going to look like, we will plug it into the department.
The wage study is just, it's a study looking at how much everyone's
Sorry.
patienting.
Sorry, the wage study is currently underway. This isn't budgeting for a study.
Correct.
This
It's
is the
making
impacts.
the impacts of it.
Right, yeah. So Jennifer could speak more to that if you need to know,
And
but
we
you'll.
do expect that number to be lower than this.
So, and just, because again, maybe let's come back later, but with COLA, that's in addition to the steps that employees are getting on an annual basis, correct? So if someone makes $100,000, year two, they're gonna make 100 and, whatever the step is difference, plus an extra 3,000 based off of their $100,000 salary cost of living adjustment. So they're getting both of those increases every year.
Correct.
I would sure hope that the contingency is going to be significantly lower than, considering we've been doing COLA forever. It's too early, and we can come back to this later, but I'm just going to say the hard thing. I think COLA needs to be gone.
And this is what we're having the closed session on next Tuesday, so you will be getting information with report results, probably tomorrow. Typically, like how we try to send stuff out ahead of time to you, but it will be coming from Flaherty and Hood, who did this study. So it'll have all the details, and then they'll present it next Tuesday.
Okay, so just keep this rolling. So we have our expenses. We need to figure out now how we fund those expenses. So it's kind of a recap on where money comes from. So we have our earned revenue, licenses and permits, charges for services, intergovernmental, and fines. And then our expenses less our earned revenue are the property taxes necessary to support our services. So here's a summary of all those segments. So we've got all of those revenues planned, their total, and you can see the changes. So sorry, remind myself what I did here. Okay, so this is how I usually present this. with these are essentially these segments that we use within our accounting system. But when I'm thinking of city revenues, it is largely between taxes, building and planning revenues, and then everything else. So I summarized that here. Our other, so everything else, we tweaked just a few things. So revenues from, let's see, I already mentioned that. We had a payment in lieu of taxes payment for a number of years, so this is the first final year in that, so that decreases other revenues. If we transfer money, we will, out of the general fund, we'll be decreasing our investments earned in that fund. And then also, Nina realized, found that we were contributing the water tower rents into the general fund, and they would be more appropriately booked into the water fund. So we changed that as a practice. Okay, so just, again, pointing out taxes increasing by that amount. We're going to get into the levy next. Any questions, feedback on the 2027 budgets, operations, expenses largely?
Yeah. I mean, it's safe to say at least half of the change is due to additional staffing between positions we approve for the fire department, position we approve for public works, and then COLA. That's basically over half of the change. Is that?
I didn't do that exact math, but I will take your word for it if you put them together. But I mean, generally, largely, our significant changes in expenses are staff related because we're essentially a service industry. But we did have some, Public Works had some equipment that you were purchasing in the salt. Those actually added up to some pretty significant numbers. But we're also, we're trying to shift some of the project stuff out of the 101 into the 401. So we're trying to balance things out and make it so that it's just year to year normal expenditures in there.
I mean, my feedback, I think I'm gonna wait till checkpoint 3, is, I think may just make more sense.
Sure.
I guess maybe just the quick feedback I'd give at this point is, if we're spending 23% more, what are our residents getting? What benefit are they getting as a result of that 23% increase? And it's a rhetorical question, but I think that's something we just need to think about.
The employee costs that were put into the budget for 2027 make up about 56% of the increase. I'm an engineer.
Thank you for doing the math, Nick.
56.07 for trying to be exact. But that's, over half of the costs are those added positions and the expected changes in insurance and all related to employees. I did add them up quick, so there might be one or two data entry errors, but I thought I checked. It's about at least 50%.
Visually, it seemed at least 50. I was too lazy to do math.
You don't know how.
It's true.
Okay, if there's nothing else, we'll get on to the levy. So we are focusing just very briefly on debt service and capital funds. We've talked about these quite a bit in our CIP discussions. This is a rundown of our debt service levies needed for the year, actually stepping down a little bit because 2016 dropped off. We will be adding 2026A. There is some flexibility on how we structure that, however, so we've got some leeway there. And then the capital and project levies. So again, these were new in 2025, and I'm trying to slowly ramp these up over time, so, and to get to this sort of, you know, quote-unquote optimal levy level, but that is essentially a moving target in a growing community. So starting this year with this idea of the 401 fund to take these projects out of the general fund. We had not had a capital fund for public works buildings. So starting one of those, we have our city center CIP planning for any of the repairs and our large repairs and maintenance on the $13 million-ish building that we just built. We have our park reserve, knowing again that the park dedication fund is funded specifically from development, and if development ends, how are we going to then replace our park equipment? We have our fire equipment and project fund, which is taking some of the more project and larger equipment purchases out of the general fund and trying to level that out over time. Street maintenance is our, I'm losing my words now here, mill and overlays and crack seals. This is, Jack had originally presented this, I believe, in 2023 at a cost of, or an average of $600,000 per year. I've been increasing it a little bit to cover inflation. Infrastructure reserve is our main vehicle for decreasing our debt over time. Most of the debt that we've issued has been related to street projects, and we can't decrease the debt without increasing our cash contributions to those projects in the future. Vehicle and equipment fund for Dustin's truck. Streetlights we're starting, so we have roughly $3 million in streetlights in the city that we need to figure out how to replace. We've got some time to kind of get that set up, but that is planned to be around $25,000 per year. Crosswalk improvements is covering the program that was started this year on those. We're not really sure what that's going to look like long term, so I just kind of tossed a number at that for now. And then the ballpark fund is the repaying the interfund loan that we used to purchase the 76 acres for the potential ballpark.
Should those years be 26 and 27?
It should be 26 and 27, thank you. Okay, so preliminary levy for discussion purposes, $13,916,308. Increase of roughly 2.4 million, which is roughly 33.92. We did get the fiscal disparities amount. It's just slightly over what I had penciled in, so we'll shave not even a 1 percentage point off of that number there. The tax impact, so going from 29.7 to 33.9, roughly 4.25 percentage points, would be roughly $315 per year, or about $25 per month for the median value home.
Our median value home, though, you have that listed at, it's not 700,000, is it?
No, it's 599.
Yeah, so it should be $264 increase.
No, that would be if you, so when I look at this, I'm looking at the median value home change from 565, or 585 to 590, so it goes essentially from this column down here, which is a $315 change.
Got it.
Our tax rates relative to other cities, we are still going to be on the low end. We've started to do some research and get other people's sort of draft and propose, so there are other cities. So this is all Washington County cities. I've also been comparing us to, these are the Washington County cities most comparable in population to Lake Elmo. We have gotten numbers from just a few cities, so Forest Lake and Matamidi are also looking at over 3 percentage point increases to their tax rate. Again, these are early numbers, so that could change.
How is Hugo keeping theirs flat?
That was my question when I saw that, because
Yeah, our local administrators meeting, we asked the same question, and it was not very easily explained. There's a lot of, I can't speak for Hugo, but we were all wondering the same thing.
Okay.
I would note,
But to be clear, Grant shouldn't be a comparison city.
and they're way down here, right?
Yeah, I mean,
I think my window for population is something like 5,000 up
Yeah.
to 20,000
well,
or
they
something.
don't have
but,
any of the services, they don't have any of the water, sewer,
Yeah.
scrub that.
Just a note on tax rate, so tax rate is just one measurement we use for comparison. It definitely does not tell the whole story. Some of the reasons our rates are low is because we have high property values. We have development revenues offsetting some of our expenses. And we have not been levying significantly for future CIP projects in the past. So when we're comparing to these other cities, we don't really know exactly what their practices are. I don't know what their capital levies look like. I don't know what their debt levies look like. So it's just, a very sort of high-level comparison. So next steps, follow-up workshop if significant changes or additional discussion are needed. We again have to adopt the preliminary levy in September, so our September 15th meeting, presumably. County notices get mailed out in early November. Fine-tuning of budgets will occur between now and December, and then our truth in taxation hearing and final budget adoption is penciled in for December 15th. Checkpoint 3.
I had a crazy thought, actually, first as you're sitting here. If we sell the old fire hall and park building, what, like $600,000 or something? Just, I know we got a lot going, but I mean, I think our revenue would be about 600,000, if I remember rightly. So if we took and applied the 600,000, put that in, reduce the capital levy. We're selling a capital asset. We're using revenue for the capital asset to fund future capital. We could reduce our tax levy by the amount of that sale. Be one way to get that down. I think, that's just the ramblings of a crazy engineer.
Yeah, and that's definitely been, and I try to use the information that I have at the moment, so I don't know exactly what that's going to be,
Right.
so I haven't really plugged anything in. My recommendation or my plan had been to put it into a capital fund for sure, and into one of the building funds. How much that actually decreases the levy, because that's a one-time injection of funds, kind of like the general fund transfers that I'm recommending. They'll go into the, I think I had proposed, for next year, largely into the infrastructure fund. But our long-term needs in the infrastructure fund are such that even that $2 million injection might not affect it significantly long-term, right?
Yeah, my thought
Kind of
is
the same
it would
thing.
help offset the increase needed because of the changes in personnel. It's kind of a one-year gap. I'm still online with you in getting that long-term thing in place, but trying to get there without getting hung on December 15th as we go to the council
Sure.
chambers.
Yeah.
It's just a thought that we have a more unique situation in 2027 with our adding our personnel and those big increases that are associated with that, and that would offset that and help us get our levy down just a little bit, needs a tax burden.
Sure.
I didn't talk about the 180 acre land, the 14 million, but
Let's deal with what we know.
yes. Just a thought.
as far as for, on slide 51, when we talk about we've not been levying significantly for future CIP projects, again, I wholeheartedly agree with the fact that we need to decrease our debt. It's at too high of a level. I think we need to be cautious about taxing people now for projects that are 10 years down the road, where they may not benefit from those projects at all. I think this comes back to our discussion of when these projects are funded via taking debt, it's people are paying for that project now, but people who are gonna benefit from it in the future are also gonna be paying from it as we pay down that debt. And by taxing people now for projects in the future, people may never actually see those projects. And they may not get the benefit. So I think, again, that doesn't mean we don't start working towards decreasing our debt and trying to start accruing funds to help match what our depreciation numbers are looking like. I think at the rate we are trying to do it at, I think it's unfair to our current tax base. I think it's too quick. I think if these projects have to happen in the future, then they're paid for more so at that time versus us trying to prepay them 10 years in advance. I just wholeheartedly think we are going too aggressively with our capital funds, with how we're trying to raise those. As far as for the levy itself, that being part of it, of where I think that levy could come down, we're asking for a 23% increase in our general, or 23% increase. Our population increased by about 6.5%. CPI was maybe 2.5% to 3% over the past year. So if we're just going based off of that, I think something closer to a total levy amount of around like 12.5 million is something that I could palate and understand the argument of we're a growing city and there's inflation. And if those are the arguments we're gonna move, or that are gonna be made for why this increase needs to happen, then I need to have a better explanation of why it needs to be up 23% versus something lower that would go more along with what would make more sense to me based off of our population growth, based off of the inflation over the last year. I, again, want the best services, of course, that'd be great. But that's only one part of the equation. We have to factor in what is the cost of that, and is the cost worth the added benefit? I think our services are great in Lake Elmo. I'm an N of 1, and if, we get 0 emails from residents saying that, we have an issue with these tax increases, I guess maybe it's just me then. My perspective is, I think our city's already doing a great job. I think our services are really good. I think we need to understand that we don't need to be always aiming for more and more. And I think that is part of the reason that we're on this trajectory to spend more and more and be up to a 50% tax rate by 2050. And that 50% tax rate is going to continue to grow because of inflation then at that point. So where does it stop?
Is it spend more and more, or is it save more and more?
Sorry.
I mean, that's part of the equation, and I guess from my perspective, when we start talking about projects in the future that people may not see them, they are using costs that were put into that project and the depreciation of that asset while they're there. And if you wait to pay for your water mains and your sewer main at the time they need to be done, and you don't put money away for it, the debt load will become insurmountable.
Can I just make a distinction here?
Sure.
So I am not saying we don't save and put away money.
Yeah.
I'm saying we don't need to do it as aggressively.
Yep.
Is my
So-
point.
So it's the same argument from last year. Okay?
Yes.
I hear you.
So,
Yep.
question,
Remember something, for the assets, the street assets and assets that are part of the general fund, we don't have a depreciation charge as an operating expense. And so basically, what these capital levies are, that depreciation charge, to put it aside for future improvements. In our water and sewer enterprise funds, we have a depreciation charge, although we're not fully funding it, but we're working our way to getting there on like a 10-year plan. But streets, streetlights, sidewalks, parks, there is no depreciation charge as an operating expense to pay for the cost of those, depreciate those assets out and recover the cost over its useful life. And so the capital levy is an attempt to do that. Does it have to be, can we slow it down or other? I'd be open to those suggestions, but I just want to bring that point forward.
That is, again, I want to be very clear. I'm not asking that we don't try to cover some of these expenses. I'm not saying let's completely get rid of the capital levies line. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we've been shown the data that we can get to appropriate debt load over the next 15 years by decreasing how much we are putting, or how much we're asking for in that capital levy. We have been shown that we can responsibly move in the right direction without asking as much from our current residents.
And you're talking about raising it, what, about $1 million instead of the 2.4? Is that what your recommendation is? Just trying to clear up what you're recommending.
Oh, well, as far as like, well, okay, I'll say this, because I was expecting, I want to see this number come down. So I was expecting then the response from staff is going to be, well, what number do you want to see that come down to?
Yeah.
And I think, okay, how do I logically try to find that number of what seems like a reasonable increase, given that we are a growing city, given that
When
there
you
is
say the
inflation.
number going down, you're talking about the 13.
The 13 total
Not
levy,
the 11.
13.9,
Okay.
down to closer to 12.5.
Okay, yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Which would be a 9.5% increase
Instead of 21.
instead of a 21% increase. It's
Right.
still significantly more than, how much inflation has occurred over the last year, but it does account for we're a growing city.
so question for staff, because some of this cost are things that we've already approved, or we've said through policy we agree with. But some of it is that discretionary thing of how fast we bring down the debt, right? On a different slide, it's the projections of the debt over time. It's over 50 million now, and there's new debt and current debt, and eventually by 2040, it's a little over 10 million. By 2050, obviously less than that. Is there, because we do this with a fund balance, that we have a policy recommendation, we should have it somewhere between X%. Is there a practice at the municipal level as to what a reasonable debt load is from a percentage standpoint, as in terms of percentage of revenue or size of city, to say, if the goal is 15 million, then we can have that conversation, well, when's our target? Is it 2020? Is it 2030? Is it 2050? I'm just curious as to, do we want to have that type of goal, or do we just want to, what's your perspective on that?
I think it's definitely worth looking at goals. I don't think we have enough information to make any type of, to set any goal like that. So one of the things that I try to keep in my mind is that we went from virtually no debt to $65 million in debt within like a 10-year time frame, I think, then like 2014 to 2020, when was this building was like 24-ish or so. And so that's in today's dollars. It's going to take us at least 15 years to get that debt load down. My concern is what happens to this city if your children are going to be here, or whatever, in 25 and 30 years. That's $65 million in work that was done, or greater than that, actually. Time value of money, that becomes, you want to do some math in your head, Nick? 150 million, 200 million, it's an astronomical number, right? And so my goal is, you know, maybe I'll get to retire by the time 2050 comes along. But like, let's make sure that we're in a decent position so that when all of this brand new city has to get reconstructed, we aren't, you know, we haven't kicked that can. We haven't, they're not starting from way back here. They're starting from somewhere somewhat reasonable.
The other thing, I've looked at the fund balance too. One of the things that we have to remember is our fund balance is what's maintaining our credit rating right now. Because our liability per capita, that because of the $60 million, is way out of whack. And the fact that we have $20 million or so in fund balance is what's keeping our credit rating where it is, and we pay a significant penalty to have that credit rating drop. And so we're on this tightrope of how do we get there? You know, the positive is our debt levy's down a little bit. You know, I mean, we're going
Momentarily.
Momentarily. We're going in the right direction though, but a lot of our capital spending is for, you know, fixing the streets that were done for so long, we're so far behind. And so, as we talked about it, trying to work this capital levy up, you know, over time and issuing less debt, it will pay long-term dividends to us. Because we issue debt, you pay interest costs, which are a lot. And so, there's no right or wrong. I agree, I'd like to see the amount come down.
I guess I just go back, I mean, here's where I'm having a hard time, because we have received the information on this. I'm gonna get the exact numbers wrong, but I'm confident within a few years here. Because I specifically asked about this last year. You know, you had the rate that you wanted to present as far as how quickly we increase our capital levies.
Yeah.
With the goal of getting to 20 million of debt, the 60 million down to 20 million. And with the numbers as presented versus taking a little bit more of a gradual approach that I had suggested, we'd achieve that same $20 million debt load. It was 3 to 5 years later. So instead of 10 years, it was 13 years that we'd achieve that.
Right.
So again, what I'm saying is, I am okay with moving in the right direction, which I still think is aggressively moving in the right direction. But we can do it a little slower. I am not asking that we don't put any capital levy funds away and start saving now. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we don't need that much. We can move in the right direction responsibly for less.
Would that be easy to model between now and then in terms of, on this specific part, because it's setting aside money into capital levies so that we issue less debt down the road, it's not the debt levy. Would that be easy to model to that discussion from last year if we just continue it, it's just a bit more elongated to try to reduce, maybe the capital levy is 2 million flat instead of 2.2, like making it up, maybe it's 1.8, maybe it's 2. Would that be something that's easier to model, or is that still?
We can certainly model it. So the struggle with some of this long-term planning is that it's the longest term stuff that kind of is the kind of the big kicker. So I'm estimating, you know, after our 10-year CIP, I have an estimate for local street projects, transportation projects, et cetera, right? Based on whatever information I've been given, I plugged in a number. We don't know how accurate that is, and without doing a, you know, $40,000 study, we won't really know what that number should be. So when we say we want to slow it down or we want to have a goal, we don't have enough information to determine what that number, you know, 15 or 20 years will be. What we do know, and what my goal is with kind of the time frame that I've been working in is, I don't know that I have it. Can you pull up the capital levy? Yeah, go down a little bit. sorry, go back up. And over. What year is this? 2045. I'm already on a 20-year plan to get us to a number that I think is reasonable for an ongoing capital levy for the infrastructure fund. So it sounds aggressive, but it's a 20-year plan already. And when we are talking about losing development revenues, which is we're going to lose the revenues, we're also going to lose all of our, we get new tax capacity every year, right? Which helps bring our tax rate down. And so pushing that up, and again, this is a policy, this is you guys. If that's what you guys want to do, I can certainly model that, we can plug that in and we can implement whatever you need. I'm just saying, like, it's already a 20-year plan.
And just a question. You know, I've always thought that, you know, because we are such a residential heavy city, is there any way to have some speculation, or is there any stratification where you can thereby say, well, a percentage of businesses will increase? I mean, it's totally speculative, right? So, because that changes that tax dynamic for residents, right? But there's no way to make some sort of Nostradamus guesstimation that.
I mean. Yeah, there is.
We have.
Is there?
Yeah.
There is.
Because you're essentially taking, so the 180 acres, for instance.
Because not all the
we don't-
development will be just residential, hopefully,
So
right?
we have information regarding the 180 acres,
Yeah.
you know, to some degree, and you can plug in, you know, some new tax capacity to that and see what that looks like. Because we have so much residential tax capacity, that additional commercial tax capacity won't have a significant impact on our tax rate. Even at, what's the estimated? Because we had run the numbers.
Well, just for that 180 acres, but if you look along I-94.
Yeah.
At Manning and Keats, there's a ton of capacity in that
Well,
area.
the other thing that happens with the commercial development, it doesn't increase your operating expenses as rapidly.
Right.
Yeah,
You know, you
The
get
cost,
that
the
balance
cost
there.
per whatever is
Maybe,
absolutely.
30 cents on the dollar.
maybe a
is-
way to get to what you're talking about, Councilor Hearn, is to, you know, we cross our fingers and say, well, let's hold our capital levy at $1,780,000, and we sell the property for $600,000. That gets you down $1 million in the levy, and slows down the capital levy growth. But again, we got to get through this year where, you know, we have these increases in operating expenses that it's a blip. And it's a needed blip, but it's a blip.
Some of them are blips. Some of them we just don't know, right? Like, we don't
Right.
know what's going to happen to health insurance premiums in
Right,
the
I just meant
future, so.
the added positions, you know, that's.
When you're doing the projections, we're not including category 5 on the CIP plan, right? Not for priorities 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5.
No, if they're in the CIP,
They're in
all
the
there.
CIP, but you're not including the projections, right?
I'm not sure. I think they are in there.
All right.
But again,
'Cause
We had
it's
talked about
the,
that. I'm glad you brought that up.
I might have done some preliminary looking at, I'm not sure that taking them out would affect the projections that much. Like, because again, this is like, there's some of these
Can you
are.
double check that? Because I think we were, I mean, when you have time,
Sure.
because that was something we discussed, was taking category 5 off of the CIP cost, because
Was
it
4
was,
included in that discussion as well?
you know what, I'd have to go back and.
5 for sure, 4 was discussed, but 5 for sure.
But I mean, I know we did discuss it, and because it just, some of it was
It's a little too
nice,
speculative.
nice to have,
Yeah.
speculative. we
Very
didn't
speculative.
know. So, yeah.
Because I don't want to levy something for
I'm
something
not
that's
saying do
speculative.
it right now, Nina, you don't, just, but that's something we should look into. She's grinding over there.
I'm all for doing whatever we can to get that done. I guess I have to think about that a little bit more with that sale price, and how that would, I guess I'm not really sure what we would have done with those funds. I guess I'd have to think about that a little bit more, but I think that's intriguing if that's an option.
Well, you could take that fund and put it in, we don't know what it's gonna be necessarily.
We don't know, but-
More than $1, less than $1 million, more than likely, right?
Yeah.
So, but it could supplant some of the costs.
And my point being, we're selling a capital asset, we should put it in the capital funds. That's be the right thing to do with it. And that would hopefully get us to where a number that's more palatable
Yeah.
for a tax increase. Just tell Jason to quit goofing off and get that thing signed.
October.
I don't think it's Jason.
I know that. You guys he hasn't said anything, so I have to give him a little bit of a shot.
I guess as far as, because yeah, I mean, my thoughts were the capital levies. My thought was cut that by around 285,000, which again would be using, again, just a made-up equation of, I took what our population growth was and what the inflation was over the last year, and increase it from what we did for the capital levy last year. I said raise that by, or cut it by 285,874 from what's proposed. So it still would be an increase from 2026. It just wouldn't be as drastic of an increase. So that's a spot we could save 285,000. I think that idea of taking the funds from the sale, again, and putting that towards this to decrease this year's expense could be a good option. I guess I don't know, as far as with the deputies, I guess that was some interesting information tonight. I didn't understand because it wasn't in the presentation as far as the two staff issue. So I was a little bit more hesitant at first. I guess, I don't know, I don't know where we're at, kind of, that is an expense that everyone feels we need. And then I guess, Mayor, I got to jump from you on it, but I think the COLA I have a little bit of an issue with.
You want
I
the
was trying to
sugar-free
understand
version.
What's that?
You want the sugar-free version.
Yeah, the Diet Cola. I want a Diet Cola. And I was trying to understand if it's just a small business thing, because I've worked in larger healthcare, and I've just never seen it. So it's very foreign to me. I don't, again, maybe it is an industry standard thing. Even if it is an industry standard thing, I disagree with it. I'd like it to be more market-based, merit-based on those annual increases, which I understand would require HR to do work to understand what those market rates are. I just think that's a better way to approach salaries versus a blanket, it goes up by 3% every single year, in addition to your automatic step increase. At a bare minimum, if we're gonna do the COLA, then I think the step has to go away and has to be 100% based on merit. I have an issue with that, just the philosophy of it, I guess, is where I have an issue.
Well, let's see what the compensation study says. I mean, that'll give us an indication of, where we're at relative to, the market and.
But the tough thing is,
rising
if this is if it's the normal thing in all governments, then all government agency positions are going up by 3% every year as a result of it, right? So the whole industry is increasing at that rate.
So at the state level, and Jeff, you can correct me if I'm off base, it's typically negotiated with ASME, who's like the largest union in the state. I don't know how many employees they got, but a ton.
Union-based thing.
Right?
Well
So
into the 5 figures.
they negotiate that. I mean, I worked at the state where sometimes it was 0% when the economy was bad. Never really got over 3%. And then based on your position and your years of service, there's this tiered structure that would, so the COLA, my understanding is to account for just basic inflation. And then the step increases is to account for the merit or years of service or experience increase.
Yes.
So even if you, let's say you take out the COLA,
I
then,
would replace it, is what I want to be.
well,
clear
then
about. Say
then you're
replace it
looking
with
at,
merit with a
instead of,
market-based system.
yeah, then you're looking at it might be a little different, but it's not gonna be a lot different. It's gonna be in that 5%, something like that. So,
Yeah,
I
there are years where, because MAPE is one of the larger ones, asked me, and this is for the state level, but it's similar to the county level. It's different with school districts. They are very different. They negotiate and ask for a COLA and ask that there be step increases, and depending upon the contract, there might be both, there might be one, there might be neither. There have been times where there have been no steps and no COLA, the plenty years,
Yeah.
that happened a couple times.
Yeah.
Because it's based upon legislative funding and those decisions and how it impacts. There's also, in our contracts too, there's a certain point where you might not have any additional steps,
Yeah,
which is a part of our,
top of the range.
and then the only thing you have is a COLA. And so that is definitely a topic that comes up often in government, is what do you do then for the positions where they're doing their job, they're excellent, and there's no more vertical movement for them unless they leave the
Just a market
organization.
rate adjustment then.
The COLA.
Yeah.
Well, it's different. It's
correct.
not just saying a blanket, hey, it's gonna be 3% every year. It's, what is the market willing to pay for this?
Correct. Yeah, and sometimes at the state level and also at the county level, the COLA it's not a straight thing every year. It'll be negotiated based
it's
upon what inflation
negotiated.
is. And then school districts are a different story.
I'm guessing that it's not gonna change, but philosophically, I would prefer it to be just market-based. But I understand.
I think you get into a little bit of the fundamental difference between private and public sector. My private sector is, we don't have I don't have a COLA increase. It's a merit-based increase based on your production and, where you're at.
People are willing to pay for engineering services.
Yeah, exactly. How profitable your company is, things of that nature. But as you mentioned earlier, government entities aren't in the business of there to make a profit. They're there to serve the public and get paid for that service.
So what we're hearing is possible ideas for a sale that hasn't occurred. Possible stretching out of capital levy based upon amazing modeling with many unknowns that still might be unknown.
So just start to hit on that though, because the modeling that we were shown, within 10 years of the models that we were, again, you provided this information, so the graphs are there somewhere. I remember you shared.
Everything changes, like all the information changes and then I have to like restructure something because of something else. So I'd have to
Well, if
look
it's
back
within the
at the.
ballpark, at least, it was showing within 10 years that at the original planned amount, that we would be very close to the 20 million. And if we did the slightly slower approach, that we would be 5 million off, from where we would be if we did the as proposed.
I fully
So
support
it's
stretching it
not a
out.
20, I don't think the projections are so far out that we have to, I think the projections were far enough out that we could know within the next 10 years if we're making a dent, satisfactory enough or not, in our debt amount, for us to make a decision of, do we need to stick with the approach that we're taking, or can we make that approach more gradual?
Yeah, and then making sure Category 5 is not included in
Yes.
projections.
Yeah, I'm with all
Which
that.
also is then on us to make sure that when we see the packet and Category 5s, we're like, yes, staff fully agree with that. That is speculative and not something we want to base a capital levy on. So that's on us
Sorry,
too.
just to clarify, did we not want to adopt category 5 in the CIP at all, or?
To be there and to exist as a placeholder, but
Okay,
Placeholder, but not as a cost,
okay, gotcha, thank you.
not an expenditure item.
not a projection impact. But with that said, and I've told residents this many times now, I cannot I cannot exaggerate at all how much better we are in a position in terms of staff, in terms of the quality of the reports coming out, in terms of the analysis. This wasn't occurring when we came on board. This certainly wasn't occurring when we were on the planning commission. Like, the hard part is that we are finding out information that many people don't want to hear.
You know,
But we need to hear that so that we can then have our conversations with residents as to, here's the status. Now, what are your priorities? We can't do that without this work. So thank you for that. Like, they're hard conversations. No one likes tax increases. No one in this world does. The costs are the costs, and then it comes down to, well, what are the costs? And that's where we come in, but we can't do this without your work. So thank you for that to the entire finance team.
All right, we give them clear direction.
do we have a,
Is it the new?
so I heard from Councilmember Hearn what his sort of palatable increases. Is there a percentage increase that feels okay in our gut, or a levy rate that feels okay more than something else? Like, just so I can massage numbers and
One of the phrases I always have had is the costs are the costs, and that I don't like doing it backwards to say, here's, because we know full well the costs ebb and flow, and you can't say this year's going to be 2% when we know the inputs vary like that. With that said, what many residents might say is, whether that's 31, 31 and a half, that's a hell of a lot more palatable and easier to explain than 33.92. But I also am fully aware a lot of that increase are things that we already approved, and things that we have a responsibility to tell our constituents, well, it's for public safety, it's for our roads, it's for our infrastructure. So I hesitate to say, yes, go for 31.5, because that's a shot in the dark.
I was looking at it, because I agree, I don't want to look at the tax rate, I was looking at just the total levy spend.
That's what I was
Increase
looking at.
percentage.
Oh,
And where I said the 9.3% increase from 2026, 11.5 million to 12.5 million.
yeah.
So he's spending just over $1 million more, is what I think is, I'm not gonna say palatable, I think it's what's needed based off the growth of the city and cost. The budget's COLA. And so that totals, that means decreasing the levy by 1.3 million. You could, cut a significant, a good portion of that potentially on the sale, if the sale happens. We could cut 285,000 from the capital levies. And then we're looking at about 400,000 still, where, we have to go budget or department by department and find where $10,000 can be saved, or, small changes.
Well, let's ask the staff to take a look at that. Blair says nothing else to do.
And this is where the pen goes flying right at you. I mean, I don't,
It's gonna be hard.
it would
I know
be
it's
extremely hard, and it's for many things that are in our strategic plan, and things that, I've had one email of someone asking about this. So I can't make a conclusion based upon one email. Obviously, this is part of the process for the next several months. I fully support a levy of 13. I don't,
13, like, you're not saying like what's proposed 13.9, you're saying like of
13.
13, okay.
Yeah, 13.
Yeah, with a reduction, with hopefully things that we can find, we as in staff.
So going back to some of the changes, so I think that the sheriff's contract feels like it's not a for sure thing. That's their recommendation. So are we like 100% on board with that change this year?
I think we need to add a deputy for sure.
I think so too.
We've added a lot of population. With that comes increased percentages, or not percentages, but just to increase incidents. I mean, more people, more incidents.
I guess I'm having a little bit of a hard time with it because the residents, from the data that was presented, the residents aren't, it's not necessary based off the data that was presented for the residents. Where I'm a little bit more for it is for the safety of the deputies. That's where I guess is what's kind of flipping my decision from not wanting to at first to, I don't want to put them in danger. I guess that's where I'm struggling a little bit.
Having 6 deputies in a city of 14,000 is real lean. Is a real lean. 7
And that's
is
why
real
It's
lean.
not Mayberry days.
That's why I said I wish
15.
they would have presented that in the presentation, because I think that makes a big difference.
Well,
to
he
understand
did
that.
tell us that, you know, his model is using 1 deputy per
After
2.
questions.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
that
and that's
came
what I'm
up,
just saying.
1 per
Yeah.
2,000, where most models show 1 per 1,000.
Yeah.
So having 7 versus 15, that's a big difference.
Agreed.
Which also means another deputy within a year or two,
Could. We don't
based
know.
upon what we've already approved. Because we will be over 16 within a year or two, based upon what we've already approved.
I think it does. Need to have
Okay, well, we can definitely take this and do our best and trim around the edges, and we certainly have ideas.
We have some time. We can set our preliminary levy, like say, we can reduce it. We set our preliminary levy while we work through some of this and, you know, and see if Jason comes through for us. And maybe some of that magic will work and we can get to the number we'd like to get to without, you know, too much pain.
Yep.
So what is the direction for staff regarding operations? I just want to make sure that's clear.
No pressure.
What was included in the budget documents this year, Clarissa, helped us put together a summary of budget changes. So the departments went through and pointed out to you the big cost drivers, the changes. So we have that information in there for you if there's any discussion on it. Otherwise, I just want to be clear on the direction to staff.
I'll give my input on that again, is I'm happy to come back at the preliminary budget. I don't have it right now, but I'm happy to look at line by line and suggest the exact ones, if that's what's necessary. I think a better practice would be to challenge all of the department heads to say, if we have to cut our budget by 10%, what are those, where does it come from? And report that to us. If it has to get cut by 10%, what are those items? Because again, if I go through this, I'm not gonna have the insight that you have in making those decisions. What I would prefer to do is set the policy of, we need to spend less, and then let you who are doing the job figure out how could we potentially achieve that. And if it's absolutely impossible, then report that to us. I'd be fine with that.
Yep.
I guess that would be my request, is do the practice of, if I have to cut 10%, what is it?
Yeah, as part of our budget discussions with each department, I did ask that. And so the common response to that is the training, the training conferences. But I don't know that we're talking thousands of dollars, so I don't know.
So then we need
The
to find
impact
what
of
that
that.
where else would it
Yeah.
come from, right? And again, If it's just not palatable, then, okay, then we have to make that decision. But if we don't attempt to do the hard exercise of figuring out where to cut, we're not going to.
Yeah, I guess we need a little bit more clear direction, because this operating budget is what they believe is necessary for the city and their departments. So maybe we can, the summary of the budget changes lays out what the increases are, the big increases. But otherwise, I'm not sure. There is no fluff, I guess, so.
I am not saying
just-
there's fluff. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is sometimes it is hard to get rid of things, and sometimes it can make it harder, and it might not be possible. But again, because this is why I have a hard time with this conversation, because you guys ask us for input on specific items, and then this is immediately the response we're given. And so I don't want to go through line item by line item, because I know this is going to be the response. And so I know this is hard when you have a budget and you've worked really hard to put in here and not have fluff, and now we're saying, hey, we need to remove more. I understand that that's hard. And if it isn't possible, I'd rather have that reported back to us at that preliminary hearing with explanations of why we're unable to cut anymore. So it's crystal clear of like, there's absolutely no way we can get rid of any of these things. Because I can guarantee you, we can get rid of more.
But we know a little over half is labor-related, insurances, staff pay increases, the new leave programs and things like that, okay? We're not gonna get any out of there. So it's the operating supplies and capital improvement and, things like that we're gonna take a look at. Maybe there's a capital improvement and say, well, we could delay this one here, or something like that, I don't know, but I know it's gonna be a difficult task, because so much of it is absorbed in labor-related costs that we can't change without reducing staff. And I don't hear, there's no appetite for doing that.
And maybe it's, again, sometimes the benefit of doing this practice, if you really take it serious, is it does force innovation, it forces creativity. Maybe there's different ways to do things that haven't been looked at. And again, maybe there isn't. I'm just giving, again, this is my feedback of as far as, you ask for like, how should we go about doing that? That is my feedback for how I would suggest going about doing that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying it's easy, or I'm not saying it's possible. I'm just saying that is my recommendation of how to approach it.
Maybe we will continue, especially after we have the closed session next Tuesday. We have more dialed in numbers there. Can check on the capital stuff, and then maybe with the summary of budget changes, we can have more of a dialed in discussion about them. So it's like, when I look at this as kind of like a in between, besides going line item by line item, this is a summary of the big cost drivers in the department, what's changed.
And I don't know if the big changes are the things to change though, right? Like maybe those are absolutely necessary. So again, that's where I have a hard time saying, get rid of this one item that you put on here as a big change, because maybe I agree with that big change. Or maybe that big change is necessary. Again, I guess just input from having done this myself, when going through and trying to cut budgets, I think software is always an area that is kind of seems to be unique. So that'd be a suggestion as far as looking, are there any where we have redundancies in software, or extra subscriptions? And again, I'm just giving input again, because that's what you guys are asking for here.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is, But again, if we don't make the effort and go in with the intent of like, if I absolutely have to cut 10%, where does it come from? Then it's not gonna happen. There's no chance it's gonna happen. And so I think it's going in with that mindset and understanding that like maybe we can't get there, but we're gonna make every effort we can to do it.
It is an exercise you go through when you're trying to meet a budget and keep expenditures at a minimum. I've looked through it, I've seen the large percentages. Different ways to attack it. When I see, I see a lot of when I look at the spreadsheet and request a change percentage, I'm looking for higher numbers. Some are up or some are down. When I look across over at the description, will seem to make sense, but I think it's an exercise worth going through. Try and scrub it. If you can't scrub it, then you can't scrub it.
And I guess I'll just add to that. If you can scrub it, I would rather you still scrub it, but report what that means as far as what's the result of scrubbing that item, right? Does that scrubbing this item mean?
I mean, one thing that sticks out to me here is in public works, temporary employees is up 74%. Is that you're adding another summer person? And I mean, just some of those higher numbers that stick out. You know, we understand that sand and salt's coming in. That's a big jump. So.
I mean, the other piece here is staff is essentially asking, do we want to change any of our strategic priorities? That's what's really being asked.
Into it too.
Again, which is why I don't support bringing it back to a much larger amount, because I know that means not doing certain hires, not investing in, say, the fire truck, not investing in our roads. But yes, 33.92, that's not going to be what's going to happen in November or December. I fully expect we'll be able to get that down, but I don't want to say what that exact number is because I don't believe that's how budgeting works. I think the costs are the costs based upon our strategic planning of what we have directed staff to create.
It's true.
I don't see fluff in here. I don't. Are there ways to innovate and change or create a different way of how labor is routed?
I mean, sometimes when in some of the places I've worked, I don't know, when Councilmember Hearn mentions software subscription, do we have multiple ArcGIS subscriptions where only one person's using it? Do we need one, or do we have? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, just things of that nature, right?
It's an audit. You're trying to kind of audit where you're at. And I guess this goes back to more of what I was pushing for last year, the approach of, like to your point of the strategic plan, and this is where, again, with the capital levies, one, I think it's going to be a huge impact to just get rid of those Category 5 items from the CIP. I think that's gonna change the projections significantly. And then I think we need to take a closer look again at the CIP look at the vehicle replacement plan, and is 7 years more appropriate for some of these vehicles than 6, right? And over the whole fleet of 40 different vehicles, that's a huge difference of what we're telling the city that we need to raise funds for over the next 30 to 40 years. And so that is where I still do think, looking at our capital expenditures, whether that be with the vehicle replacement plan, making sure that we, seeing if we can be using these vehicles longer, as we talk about the fire truck, with making sure that we refurbish it 15 years from now versus buying a new one. That is where I think we can make a really big dent, because again, when we talk about a $1,000 budget line item, yeah, these are really hard to cut and get rid of. I think some of the capital levies, I think that's where it can move the needle a lot more with little changes. So I don't want to get too focused on just the general fund, the budget. I want to still look at it and do that. My suggestion would be, how do you get 10% out of that? But how do we decrease the spending on the capital levies, decrease our amount of spending in the capital improvement projects, and can we just decrease how much we're actually levying in the first place to take a slightly slower approach? So then we're approaching this from 3 different angles. And it's not just looking at the revenue side of things. It's looking at the expense side of things, which is, I think, our responsibility. To be thorough on those. I thought I was coming and I was gonna say anything tonight. Told my wife I'd be back at 8:30.
Screwed that one up.
All right. If we need to have another workshop with staff, then we can schedule a special workshop if needed. Clear?
That's mud.
All right. With that, I thank everybody for their attention and their time. I'll adjourn this meeting at 10:09.